It is Thursday afternoon, East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around, gather around, gather around. Great to be with you. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com, part of the On3 network. Come on in, let's talk some Michigan State football. Let's go gather around. Let's all behave ourselves. Let's all be kind to one another. We need kind people in this country, and we are certainly kind here for the most part. We have to play recess attendant once in a while, but it's all good. Appreciate everybody dropping by a little bit late, getting started as usual. But that's what happens when you're trying to get some information together. We don't just turn on the thing and start, and we try to pour some research into our answers and to some of the questions, some of the things we talk about. We'll be talking about Michigan State football, 4-4 after a tough loss at Michigan on Saturday. Michigan State doing some good things. Could have won. You guys all know what happened. Could have won. Some might say should have won. Credit to Michigan. They played well. They finished in the red zone. They got a turnover, won the turnover battle. They cleaned up their turnover problem. They played at home. Michigan State playing on the road. Couple of false starts because of crowd noise, which is part of the game. Ended up being negative in terms of hurting some of those drives, including one at the very end on what could have been the game-tying drive. So Michigan State 4-4 taking on Indiana this weekend at home. Finally, an afternoon game in beautiful Spartan Stadium against a Big Ten opponent. Let's see what the weather's going to be. September weather's been ridiculously great around here. October's been ridiculously great around here. It switches to November on Saturday, and it looks like 56 degrees, clear and sunny. 56 degrees, going to be a little bit crisp. Bring your cider to the tailgates. 3:30, perfect game time, right? Because you can get there and you get all lathered up, sauced up, all those things. Students should be able to be there. It's not fall break like it was for the Iowa game. I don't know what the hell fall break is. We never had fall break back in my day, and we liked it. Fall break, what is this nonsense? If you didn't know, for the Iowa game, Michigan State students were gone. The dorms were empty because of fall break. I mean, you go back to even the Prairie View game, the first time students were on campus, there was a lightning delay, and there was a delay for the student section to get into the stadium. It took like an hour for all the students to get in. A lot of them left, so that one was not great. The Ohio State game, for whatever reason, did not sell out. Even the Ohio State fans didn't show up to sell out that game. The Iowa game, like I said, fall break. So for the first time, it's going to be real autumnal college football at Michigan State. The new coaching staff still has not seen Spartan Stadium totally lit, and it needs to be lit this weekend against Indiana. Very good team, 8-0. What are they ranked? Number 13 in the country. But Indiana has not played a tough road game yet. And they've got a really good team. They played at UCLA. That's not a road game. They played at Northwestern. That's not a road game this year, playing on the lake on the lacrosse field. So they're fired up. They're 8-0. They're the talk of the town, toast of the town in Bloomington. Coming to Michigan State this weekend. And the quarterback, Rourke, will he be okay? Excellent quarterback, transferred in from Ohio University. Injured his thumbnail against Nebraska, and thumbnail ripped off. So he was replaced by Jackson last week, and who did a pretty good job. A lot of JMU and Old Dominion transfers on that team for a team that's played in some raucous home environments. But they're coming in now as the hunted a little bit more. Indiana is for the first time in forever, undefeated for the first time since 1967, and the transfers. Okay, we'll see if Rourke plays. They didn't have road crowds like this very often for Ohio U. I know they went on the road once in a while for paycheck games. Maybe James Madison has as well. But it's going to be a little bit of a new frontier, I think, for Indiana. If Michigan State can come and play with the physical fire that they had in the Iowa game that was coming off a bye week. And Michigan State was excellent that day. And coming off the bye week, the timing was everything. Michigan State played with good physicality against Michigan. Did not do well in the pass rush or pass protection. That was one of the differences in the game, maybe the difference. But Michigan State, the better running attack in that game against Michigan. I mean, you look at the numbers. Michigan State's tailbacks, 31 carries, 155 yards, 5.0 per carry for Michigan State's tailbacks. Michigan's tailbacks, Donovan Edwards, 9 carries, 27 yards, 2.7 per carry. Khalil Mullings, the kicker, the stomper, Mullings, maybe he was frustrated by this. 13 carries, 21 yards, 1.4 yards per carry, the worst game of his career. Maybe that's what was bothering him at the end of the game. Maybe he was having a little bit of problem with that. I don't know. But they made a difference with the quarterback runs. There was one that got out wide to the left with their scoring drive, I think, at the beginning of the second half. Orgy's on the field. The quarterback run is on the table, gets outside for, I think, 35 yards. On that one, Charles Brantley came in a little thin. Michigan State was in cover 4. Brantley's had a very good year. That one came in a little thin, lost contain. Nikai Martinez, play side safety, came in a little thin, lost contain. Got out down the sideline, and Malik Spencer had to run him down. Like Jonathan Smith said, they knew that the quarterback run play, the quarterback run was going to be something that they would go to, of course, with Alex Orgy. That one got out for 29 yards, and that was a big play during one of their touchdown drives. And Smith was, he said they worked on it, and he didn't say this in so many words, but he was disappointed that Michigan State didn't play the run better on that one. And, of course, at the end of the game when they ran out the clock, and there was a 3rd and goal, or was it 4th and goal, down to the goal line when Orgy, with the quarterback keeper, walked in after Michigan State had a pretty good goal line stand. On that one, Michigan had tight ends and all the strength to the left. Michigan State loaded up strength over there also. Michigan had strength to the left. And in 4th down situations, most of the year, most of the year, the Wolverines have run to the left. They had Mullings in as a blocking back, becomes a +1 quarterback keeper, and he goes in for the touchdown. A good running quarterback is hard to stop when it's 10 blocking 11. Normally, when you hand off to a running back, it's 9 blocking 11. So you have 2 unblocked safeties. And the key is to try to make one of those safeties miss, but when does that unblocked player get to the running back if somebody doesn't defeat a block? If you're handing somebody off, it's 9 blocking 11. If the quarterback's keeping it, it's 10 blocking 11. It gives you a +1 advantage. That's why that single wing offense back in the 1940s, that's why Wildcat became in vogue in the last 10, 15 years. Michigan State with the previous coaches have tried to run Wildcat with no success, as you know, but it was a big one for Michigan on Saturday, and they don't call it Wildcat because he's a quarterback, but essentially it is. And Michigan State had a plan to stop it, worked on it, did not get that done. So although Michigan State did a great job stopping the tailbacks, they did not stop the quarterback run, and that was one of the failures in that game. All right, so I think we might have some people calling in. I'm going to put the number up. People want to call in. I know people are busy at work and so forth. If you want to call in and vent a little bit, we'll certainly allow you to do that. Put the number right here. And what we do here with SpartanMag Live is we take questions from the mailbag every day over at SpartanMag.com and the Underground Bunker message board, which is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. It's the daily narrative on Michigan State sports. It's the message board at SpartanMag.com. We have great membership. They're paying members. They subscribe to SpartanMag.com, and we try to provide unmatched, in-depth, analytical coverage of Michigan State sports and football, basketball, recruiting also. Football and basketball. Covered the Ferris State basketball game last week. Got 2 basketball games coming up next week. And the message board, that's where Michigan State fans come in from all around the world to talk about Michigan State sports and to do some complaining also, but also to throw out some attaboys. It's a good time. Over at the Underground Bunker message board, I invited people last night to post some questions. So we've got a Thursday afternoon show this week, which is not ideal. It'd be better to do it earlier in the week so people have more time to consume it, but it's been a busy week. I know that's no excuse, but we're doing what we can. I can't believe it's already Thursday. All right, question number 1, Jay from Lake Forest, Illinois. He says, how are you feeling about our chances against Indiana? Getting right to it, aren't we? Chances against Indiana. What's the betting line? Somebody post on here. Tell me what the point spread is. Indiana's good. Hey, the statistics are crazy with Indiana this year. As you know, 8-0. They've not trailed in any game all season. They're outscoring opponents something like 97-0 in the first quarter. Repeat, 97-0 in the first quarter. I think they're averaging over 500 yards of offense, which is among the best in the country, if not the best. Point differential is the best in the country. Point differential through 8 games, through 7 games, was the best college football has seen in the last 5 years. Point differential. So they're executing. Got a great system, run game, pass game, RPOs, explosiveness. They've done a great job with the transfer portal on both sides of the ball. The defense is what has surprised me. We heard a lot about the RPO game earlier in the season, but the defense has been impressive. They lead the Big Ten in rushing defense. That's going to be a great challenge for Michigan State. Michigan State has been able to run the ball the last two games against Iowa and Michigan, surprisingly so. Michigan was holding teams to 3.0 yards per carry. Good, but not as great as they've been in recent years, but pretty good. Michigan State, for their tailbacks to average 5 yards a carry, was outstanding. Iowa's defense statistically has not been as good this year, but Michigan State ran the ball for, 212 yards? Surprising. I don't remember when I've seen a Michigan State ground attack, rushing attack, run blocking outfit go from mediocre to quite good literally overnight. Maybe not literally overnight. The bye week helped. So now they're playing an Indiana team that's done well in stopping the run, but they've not faced a team like Michigan State. And I can't believe I'm saying Michigan State is a really good running attack, but I think they are. The last 2 weeks, I think, shows that. Does Nate Carter run with the vigor and the force that he showed at Michigan? I mean, he was running inspired. You could see that it was different. Running backs coach Keith Boniface said this week that he told Nate, hey, whatever you ate before the game, whatever, how much you were sleeping, make sure you get enough sleep. Whatever that was, we need that same Nate Carter. It's hard to do that in this sport, to get up and play like that for 12 straight weeks. Hard to do that. But they need that Nate Carter. K'Ron Lynch-Adams was not as productive against Michigan. Need him to bounce back and provide some things. Offensive line's been better. That's a great matchup. Michigan State running attack looking good of late. Can they keep it up? Indiana statistically run defense has been good. Can they keep it up against a good veteran? Well, not veteran, but a good venerable. Is venerable the right word? A good Michigan State, a good bona fide Big Ten rushing outfit. Can Indiana do it again? Indiana's personnel impresses me on the defensive side of the ball. I didn't really expect that to be the case. When you look at their transfers, they're getting a lot out of these guys. Transfers in general, of their 22 starters, 14 are transfers. 14 are first-year transfers, and 2 or 3 others are like second-year transfers. 7 of the starters, 7 of the 22 are transfers from James Madison. Kurt Cignetti had a very good team at James Madison. Where'd they go, like 12-1 last year, something like that. Excellent team. He would have been a more sought-after coach if he hadn't been 63 years old, getting a late start as a head coach in his career, but he's outstanding. You see him. You see the success he's having. I apologize for the cough. Personality-wise, reminds me of Morton Downey Jr. If you're of a certain age, you remember Morton Downey Jr. in the 80s. Kind of had an up-and-down career. Mouthy. Cignetti, mouthy, but kind of likable, too, in my opinion. I don't know. Purdue people probably wouldn't agree. So they have 7 starters from James Madison, plus an 8th, the backup running back coming in from James Madison. And they have 2 starters who've transferred from Old Dominion. They played against Old Dominion last year, former teammates of Wayne Matthews. 2 starters from Old Dominion, so 7 from JMU, an 8th backup running back, 2 more that they played against. 2 regulars from Wake Forest, including the running back Ellison. And Ellison, I think, is a guy that James Madison recruited coming out of high school. Couldn't really get him, goes to Wake Forest. They bring him to Indiana, having a really good year. Also, the quarterback Rourke, coming in from Ohio University, been very efficient, very good veteran, very good player. He brings in a wide receiver transferring in from Ohio University, Miles Cross. So in terms of the pragmatism of the transfer portal for them, 7 coming in from their former team, 2 more off their schedule from last year, 2 more guys that they recruited in the past, and then quarterback and his receiver come in. You're talking 14 out of 22. So really great job with the transfer portal. A lot of veterans in there to make this a really good team right away. Now, can they have that much success in the portal going forward? You won't be bringing in your own players in the future. You have to do a great job evaluating otherwise. Have to be pragmatic in other ways. So there's a chance this is a one-hit wonder for them right now. Now, I really like the quarterback they got a commitment from. A kid named, I think his name's Tyler Cherry, kid from Carmel, Indiana. Michigan State recruited him, came in second. Talked to his coach last year, really looked at him closely during the summer. Really good quarterback prospect, excellent quarterback prospect. I thought he was underrated. He's going to be good in the future. But in terms of like next year, keeping it going is going to be difficult for Indiana. But don't worry about next year right now. Talk about next game this Saturday. Excellent team when you talk about Rourke and the Ellison kid, the wide receivers. The wide receiver, Elijah Surratt, coming in from James Madison. Excellent wide receiver. Tight end, Horton is just kind of a ball control guy, just kind of a guy. He's all right. On defense, that's what I was getting to a minute ago. They've got a defensive end, number 6, Mikal Kamara. It's like 6'1", 265 from James Madison. 6'1", 265. Kind of a squatty body. Excellent burst. Excellent agility, changing of direction, strength, speed to strength in the pass rush. It's a good pass rush, the number 1 in the Big Ten in sacks. This guy, Kamara, he's the real deal. Michigan State had trouble with Stewart last week, and this guy is going to give them a chance to show that they've improved because Kamara is a handful.
Call from
Nils Deco.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, we got Nils Deco calling in from Houston, Texas, formerly of, what was the name of that radio station in Austin, Texas?
1049 The Horn.
The Horn, formerly of The Horn in Austin, Texas. Nils Deco, very astute observer of all things Michigan State sports. He's usually in a bad mood, which makes it entertaining. And we're glad to welcome him on the show now. Nils, sounds like you're driving. First of all, I hope you have your seatbelt on. Secondly, I hope you're not driving. I hope you're pulled over and talking in a parking lot. That's what we're going to pretend you're doing.
We're hands-free, buddy. We're good. We're hands-free. We're good.
All right. We're
locked in.
Sounds good. So we're talking about Michigan State versus Indiana this weekend. I know that you hate the Hoosiers growing up in Wabash, Indiana. So I know this is an important one for you. But before that, let's back it up. Let's talk about everything that happened in the Michigan game. I know you watched it. I know you threw a tantrum like a lot of Michigan State fans did. That's all right. But we're going to ask you to be less of a fan, more of an observer. But it's good to have the blood boiling a little bit because a lot of people out there watching, they've got some blood boiling still from last Saturday's game. Your thoughts, Michigan State football, the game in Ann Arbor, first of all?
Oh, just disappointing that first drive. You drive, 73 yards in 8 minutes. I mean, you do it as well as you can do. You're shrinking the game. I mean, basically, about 14% of the game was eaten up right then and there, and then you come away with no points. My only thing is, I'm concerned, why didn't Coach Smith call a timeout instead of eating the 5 yards? I just think, you score a touchdown there, and then, the problem is Jonathan Kim, misses the kick, and then you've got nothing. And when you're the visitor and you're the underdog and you need a lot of things to go your way in order to make the upset, especially against Michigan, because they're going to get a couple calls and they're not going to call any holds on Michigan. They had 0 penalties. Like, I think Matt Dorsey said on the message board, I think 1.5, there's a 1.5 chance that can happen in a football game. Well, it happened for Michigan because, they don't ever commit any penalties. So, I mean, I think it's discouraging that we didn't score on that first drive. I think that set the tenor for the whole game. I know we came back and scored on the next drive, but, to go up 7-0 and then get a 3-and-out would have been a much different scenario, I think, than getting the punt and then getting the touchdown after their 3-and-out. We dominated probably, 65% of the game, I think. The second quarter was bad and probably the half of the third quarter was poor, but we dominated the game. I mean, 48 out of 53 times winning team has rushed for more yards than the other team, and we ran for more, 163 to 119. And so that's, disconcerting. But, it's a well-coached football team. We made some mistakes. I didn't like the onside kick, right there after we kicked that field goal. I thought that was kind of, I think that was kind of a hasty decision. But, when you run the ball like we have the last 2 weeks, I think that's what we'll do against Indiana. I think they've done a good job of getting that turned around. I know Brandon Baldwin's probably our weakest link at right guard. I just don't know if he's quick enough in that position. Seemed like to me he whipped on 2 or 3 big plays against Michigan on Saturday. But, all in all, I mean, from what we've dealt with in the past few years, and this is a well-coached football team with a high ceiling. There's a good article by Austin Eek in The Athletic, and he said, Michigan State's a buy, like you would say. They are a buy right now.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Just making some notes on some of the things you said. Michigan with no penalties and no turnovers. Their running game was not great, Michigan's, but in a lot of ways it was their A game. They ratcheted it up, tightened the screws, and came with their A game, and they needed to have their A game. Any turnovers, they were fighting off the ropes that day, and they got that part of it done. as far as, Michigan State, that first drive, it was expensive. It was also very impressive. Michigan State running down there, had the little screen pass to Nate Carter. Running the ball with success, quarterback keepers with success. As the game wore on, Michigan State did not call any more quarterback keepers. I suspect, Childs took a hard shot on one of those, and I wonder if they dialed back on the quarterback zone read, run, keep game because of the nature of that rivalry and the way it started. I'm not sure they had that mindset going in, but I think they adjusted that way. I think Michigan State should have kicked the field goal on the opening drive because Michigan notoriously had been a mediocre offense. Now, if you're playing Ole Miss and you think you need to score 35 points to win, then you go for it. You're playing a Michigan team that had just scored 7 points at Illinois. A field goal, theoretically, is worth it. I know Jonathan Smith blames himself, says he should have called timeout, says he would have rather have gone for it. And then if you go for it, you don't make it. I would not have. I think you kick a field goal there. So I disagree with everybody. I don't think you take a timeout there. I don't think you go for it. I think you kick a field goal. Problem is you miss it on the left hash, right-footed kicker, pushed it wide. Money kicker from distance, but those chip shots sometimes can be a little more difficult. And I think you take the points there, opening drive on the road against a team that's been offensively challenged. For the same reason, I was not wild about the onside kick. Jonathan Smith said trying to steal a possession. Again, I think that's something you do theoretically in a game that's in the 30s. Like Nick Saban did against Clemson in the national championship game. They didn't think they could stop Clemson, so they stole a possession with an onside kick. In this game, Michigan State had just taken a 16-10 lead against an offense that still was trying to prove itself. When Michigan State had a really nice drive there, so that the stadium was starting to get a little tense again, and that Michigan sideline might have started to get a little tense again. Kick it to them, make them go 75 yards. Onside kick. Jonathan Smith is a guy that's going to take some risks. They took a lot of risks at Oregon State. That's part of what they're going to do. Dan Campbell style, Detroit Lions. This game, this opponent, I respectfully disagree with that. That doesn't mean that I'm right. I mean, Michigan State might have kicked it off. The dude might have returned it for a touchdown. We don't know. So in this game, in that situation, I wasn't wild about that. But the rest of it, the coaching, the preparation to get the run game turned around, to get the run defense stopping a dangerous running attack, aside from the quarterback keepers, I thought was good coaching, good preparation. So I agree with you on those things. Brandon Baldwin, got beat on a couple of expensive tackles for loss when Michigan is predominantly a two-gapping team up front. So when they one-gap you, it's tough for an offensive lineman because it's kind of like you're facing Nolan Ryan over and over, and the fastball. Then they throw a change-up, and that's where you get some tackles for loss sometimes. If you're a two-gapping team, when do you do a one-gap? When you do it, they did it down there on I think a 3rd and 1. When it was 16-10, when it was 16-7, Michigan State's driving, and it was a 3rd and 1 tackle for loss. Had to kick a field goal, 16-10, one gapped on that play. So Baldwin has to be good enough that when they do one gap, that he can make that adjustment. There's another one down at the goal line when they did it. It didn't do it very often, but when they did it, they made it work. So Baldwin struggled not as badly as he has in other games, and it was interesting that with Michigan State's touchdown, when they took the 7-0 lead, Michigan State ran power, and they pulled Brandon Baldwin into the B gap. Luke Newman did a really good job closing down on 97. I think his name's Awanyu or something like that. Closed him off. Interestingly, Michigan, when I look back at it, they had Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant out as defensive ends. I think they're expecting Michigan State to run wide. Instead, Michigan State ran power, which I don't think they've ran power all season. I don't remember Baldwin. I'm getting older. My memory's not as good, but I don't think they've run power all season in terms of right guard pull. And I wonder if at the line of scrimmage they got up there and the goal line defense, did Michigan show that all year that they would put Grant and Graham outside? So Michigan State stayed away from those two guys outside and ran inside with a play they hadn't shown all year. Newman, who's played really well the last 2 weeks, crashes it inside. Baldwin pulls, finds the middle linebacker. Really good contact on him. Touchdown. So Baldwin played really well in that game. Interesting that they went to Baldwin as a pull guard on that play. Baldwin's been a left tackle. I don't remember them asking him to be a pull guard, either front side or even on counters all year. So it's a new thing for him. So they obviously been working on it. And if they have to decide which guard is going to pull, Newman is a guy with that strength to clear the area out. Baldwin may be a little more athletic, so that made sense. If you're asking Baldwin to clear it out, he might not have quite enough strength to do it. Maybe Newman's. So they did it correctly on that one. Childs, if that was the play call, he stayed with it and it was correct. If that was a change at the line of scrimmage, I'd have to go back and look at it. How long they were in their cadence, I'm not sure. But you're right. Baldwin's been a weakness in some areas, but he was good on that play. And I'll say this about one-gapping. Now, Indiana is a one-gapping team. They're not a two-gapping team like Iowa and Michigan. Michigan State has had success on the ground against two-gapping teams. Now they're going back to a one-gapping team that's a little more quick. And Michigan State's problems with tackles for loss, with running, with defensive linemen getting immediate penetration into the backfield, that's going to become a concern again for this game, more so than the last two games. I know Iowa and Michigan have great defensive reputations, but styles make fights. Michigan State's had trouble, especially with wide zone against one-gap penetration. Indiana's going to go one-gap penetration. Michigan State needs to show that they can keep that closed off if they want to take another step towards showing that they are an all-around quality, improving running attack. But Indiana's a little bit different show up front, and they've got good players up front. I know you hate Indiana, so you probably watched them, and everybody's talking about their offense. Have you seen Indiana's defense? I mean, they're aggressive. They've got good, thick, strong guys, good, solid inside linebackers, good defensive backs, and they're sound in their structure with pass defense. But they've had a weak schedule, but that defense has been really good. Have you watched their defense, Nils?
Yeah, I mean, the Pons kid, I think he had, 2 interceptions last week?
Yeah, he's 5'9", transfer from James Madison, and Washington went deep against him in the second quarter with that guy DeVell Boston or whatever his name is, 6'4" wide receiver, and quick hip turn, acceleration, stacked him, got on top, stayed on top, arrived at the ball, tipped it, juggling interception to himself. Pons is a good cover corner transfer from James Madison. He's a good one. But, I mean, now he's going to go against Marsh. And Marsh was quiet last week. Probably not his fault. They didn't go to him very much. So Michigan State needs to get Marsh established again. But they're going against Indiana, who leads the Big Ten in sacks.
The defensive end, I think there's a defensive end that's like a 6-year guy from JMU as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Kamara.
Number 6, I think.
Mikhail Kamara. I was talking about him earlier in the show. 6'1", 265. He's got some thickness, got some strength, and has the agility of a running back and accelerates quickly. If they use him on stunts, he's turning the corner. He's quick. Speed to power, strong. I mean, Kamara.
Kind of like a Jonell St. Deek.
Yes. Stronger. But yes, similar. He doesn't look, he's not out of central casting, but he makes it work. He's got some explosive athleticism and agility. And he's a problem. Michigan State had problems with Stewart last week. Stanton Ramil, who I think has been coming along, having a real nice redshirt freshman year, struggled against Stewart on that huge fourth down incompletion at the end of the game. Now he's got a chance to, get off the mat and do it against number 6. And it's not going to be easy. Number 6 will line up inside on third down sometimes. So Michigan State's pass protection, which was faulty last week, that needs to improve. And it's possible. Michigan State has shown improvement throughout the course of the season in certain parts of the football team. Pass protection needs to come along now against, like I said, the team that ranks number 1 in the Big Ten in sacks against a weak schedule. Now, Indiana. Go ahead. Indiana, they've played at UCLA. They played at Northwestern. They've not had a real road game. They played at home. They dominated Nebraska, which was impressive. At Northwestern, that game was 24-17 going into the fourth quarter. Washington outgained Indiana. Now, part of that's a little bit misleading because Indiana had a pick 6. Anytime you have a pick 6 or like a big kickoff return, that takes away an offensive possession for you. So your total yards could get skewed on that. But Washington's offense is a lot like Michigan State's. They'll get under center a little bit, run counter boot, throw those crossing route to over routes. And Washington had some success, but Washington turned it over. I just mentioned that deep one when they were going to Boston. And I can't remember the other turnover. But turnovers, Indiana, Michigan State has not done well in the takeaway department in recent weeks. Take care of the ball, run the ball, stop the run, and then see what Indiana can do with their RPO game and their pass game. I think that Michigan State, a big part of it's going to be Michigan State's level of physical motivation and readiness. I have no reason to believe that it'll be down a notch. Jonathan Smith coaches the team to get better every week, and be better, be at their best at the end of the season. Now, that's from a program that played their rivalry game at the end of the year. So Michigan State, in a lot of ways, has been getting better every year, every week. Last week's pass protection notwithstanding. So,
how many plays did we play on defense, though, Jim? How many snaps did we have on defense last week?
I'll look it up. So Michigan State going to the black uniforms. I think that Michigan State, their best game of the year, of course, was against Iowa, even though Michigan State's red zone offense was not good on that day, has not been good all season. But the physicality for Michigan State looked like a different team in terms of establishing the run, doing a great job stopping the run as well, except for the one that got out for 75 yards when Malik Spencer took too thin of angle, ran into Darius Snow, who didn't do a great enough job of collisioning a pulling left tackle, so he gums it up. So it's a bad angle, plus more of a log jam than there should be. Snow should collision that thing, make a little bit more space, and Spencer, the tackle angle should be a little bit more thick, especially in that situation. Michigan State's up by 2 touchdowns, so protecting things a little bit. They let one get out, up by 2 scores anyway. So, Michigan State did a really great job overall at Iowa with their physicality on both sides of the ball. Coming off the bye week had a lot to do with that. So they were primed and ready to fire at home. Rivalry game, they were primed and ready to fire in that game also, especially run game early, run defense early, run defense for the tailback position throughout the game. So physicality, Michigan State was good 2 straight weeks. Now can they answer the bell, come back and do it again for a 3rd week? I'll look that up right now to see how many snaps Michigan State played. But that to me is a big determining factor. And this grim sport of college football, it's hard to get up and stay up every single week. Nick Saban used to say that you can get sky high twice a year, maybe 3 times, but twice is about it. Jonathan Smith wants to build and build and build. Well, this is the next one, and it's a big one. You don't want to fall to 4-5. If you win this game and you beat a top 15 team and you're 5-4, a lot of things, and then you go into a bye week, I mean, then a lot of positive things are on the table. And I think Michigan State, as long as the turnover situation doesn't get crazy, I think Michigan State's going to be right in this game with a chance to get a big win against Indiana. Jonathan Smith last night on his radio show calling for Michigan State fans to get there, buy the tickets, fill up the stadium. They need a home field advantage. Like I said earlier in this show, Michigan State has not had a full, real representative Spartan Stadium all year for various reasons. You had the lightning delay for the Prairie View game. It was fall break for the students for the Iowa game. The Ohio State game was just weird. It didn't sell out for some reason, even though Ohio State fans didn't show up. I was a little disappointed in that. I have great respect for the Michigan State fans who were there. Maybe Michigan State fans were worried about a blowout. I don't know. But this one is going to be 59 degrees, sunny, clear, Spartan Stadium. It's an apple cider day. It's football. It's daylight. It's a big game. Spartan Stadium, I'm expecting to be full and loud. What do you think, Nils?
You'd hope so. I mean, especially since Michigan State hadn't had any 3:30 games. I mean, it's been a year of 7:30 Peacock or Big Ten Network games, and this one, it's going to be on Peacock. It's disappointing it's on a pay-per-view on a streaming service. It is what it is. That's why you get all that money from NBC. But it seems to me that, it's a 2:30 game or a 3:30 game there in East Lansing, and I think, the fans will be fired up. It's good for tailgating. I think, you get too far into the day, your tailgating gets kind of old. Trying to make sure you don't get too lathered up, but, get there by, 7 to 8 o'clock, have your beers and your brats, and, by 3:30, you'll be ready to go and, go get the full breast platoon, and I think the good thing, in my opinion, is Indiana plays Michigan, then they have a bye week in Ohio State. And, kids can say what all they want, the coach can say what they all want. Michigan State is not going to be somebody that you circle on your calendar or on your schedule like, hey, this is a red letter game. This is going to happen. Michigan is behind us. Michigan's always going to bring a little bit more attention. We know it. We hate it, but it is what it is. So I think that kind of leads kind of a advantage to Michigan State. Kirk Cignetti's never been in Spartan Stadium. He said that on his press conference on Monday. He's never been in Spartan Stadium, even though he's from West Virginia or Pittsburgh. I don't know how he's never coached in Spartan Stadium, but, maybe he can call Saban his buddy, and, maybe Saban will give him some scoop on how to take advantage of Spartan Stadium. But I think, Indiana, they probably played the cleanest game of any team in the country right now. They've probably been the cleanest, right? I think they're averaging 48.7 points per game.
Yes.
I think they've only given up, six turnovers?
Yeah.
Less than 1 a game?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they pretty much played perfect football, right?
Yeah.
They turned over Nebraska 4 times in that 56-7 game, and that game wasn't as dominant as some people think. It was those 4 turnovers led to 28 points for Indiana. I'm not saying that's not indicative of the score, but that's like going back to the Michigan State Iowa game. We kicked 6 field goals, and we have 6 touchdowns. I know if Evans, Butts, and Kennedy are nuts, we'd have Christmas all year long, but that would have been probably like a 50. What would that have been? 49-20 type of game, and probably would have gotten a lot more credibility for it. Beating up an Iowa team. A lot of people thought we just kind of backdoored our way into that Iowa game. I thought that was an impressive victory. We talked about that before, but I think Indiana, the quarterback is from the same hometown as 2 former Spartan greats, Tony Mandarich and Mike Vanderjack. Remember, Mike Vanderjack started in East Lansing, so this guy's from Oakville, Ontario, Canada. But the O'Rourke kid, I'm just wondering if his thumb, he has 2 pins in his thumb, are they really going to play him? Because if he gets any kind of injury, then he's probably out for the year. I would think they would hold him for the Michigan game. That's what I thought, because of the idea that, you don't play him this week, you give him another week off, they play Michigan, and then they have an off week, and then they get ready for Ohio State. And, they could have a loss.
Yeah.
They could have one loss. They go to the Ohio State game, beat them, they're playing for the Big Ten championship, most likely, because Purdue's not going to beat them.
Yeah, Washington last week outgained them 318 to 312, like I said. About 10 minutes left in the first half, and total yardage was Washington 189, Indiana 94, and Indiana was leading 14-7 at the time. Washington got stopped on a 4th and 1 by about an inch, and then Indiana gets a field goal at the end of the half to make it 17-7, and that game kind of changed a little bit. Washington got an interception, a little tip pass, defensive line interception early in the second half, but Washington was right in that game. For the game, Washington held Indiana to 3.6 yards per carry. That's what you have to do, first of all. Now, I know Rourke wasn't playing. They allow 6.5 yards per pass to Indiana, which is not great. They held Indiana to 318 yards of offense. It's an Indiana offense that had been getting 500-plus every single week. Washington held them in check a little bit. And for Washington, that's a 9 a.m. kickoff for the Huskies. So Indiana's the toast of the town. They're feeling good and all these things. I remember when Michigan State was 7-0, 8-0, going to Iowa, like D'Antonio's first really good breakthrough top 10 type of season. You might remember they went to Iowa and lost 49-3 or something like that, or what was it, 27-3? I get the
31-6 or something. Kirk Cousins was brutal.
Yeah. Now that day, I had a sense. Iowa was not great. It was not a great Iowa team, but on that day, I came away with the sense that was a program win for Iowa. Not that the victory made any difference in their program. I mean, the program, the Iowa program itself, rose up against an unbeaten visitor and said, no, not in our yard. It was like, no, this is not happening. And part of that is when you've got a program that's established year after year after year, like Kirk Ferentz has. Michigan State is not established right now year after year after year. But partly also when I gained a sense that I'd never covered many undefeated teams in the past that have been undefeated in November. But when you get undefeated into November, the opponent rises up against you a little more. It's different. It becomes harder and harder to stay undefeated. Having covered that team and been around it, I didn't have a sense for that. You just think like a team is great, and everybody watches Georgia, and they just win. Not this year, they lost to Alabama, but some of these teams just win, and you think it's no big deal. And for those teams that are ultra talented, maybe it is no big deal, just keep winning. But when you're in Indiana this year or Michigan State that year, when you have, when you're undefeated, the level of opponent you're getting, especially on the road, it's just a little bit more. They're waiting for you. And I suspect Michigan State is going to be ready and waiting for this Indiana team because they're coming in with that undefeated record. They're undefeated for a reason. They're very good. But if Michigan State can harness that physicality and the force that they had against Iowa and Michigan, and no problems with the turnovers, Childs gets back into a rhythm a little bit, I think Indiana's going to have all they can handle in this game. All they can handle. For all those reasons, all those intangibles. If Indiana can come to Michigan State and win by 14 like they've been beating everybody else, that'll be very impressive, and I'll be a little bit surprised. I'll be pleasantly surprised on their behalf. Now, I've got to go watch the Northwestern game. I've not watched that one yet. I'll be checking that out for the pre-snap read, which we'll be posting later in the week. Any closing thoughts, Nils, before I let you go?
I just think the situation where, much mentioned, I mean, Indiana, every week they're starting, now all of a sudden they're getting this attention they've never gotten before. They had games. Everybody's patting them on the back. But like you said, this isn't an undefeated program. This is a program that has the worst, and I know we're all not history majors, but it has the worst winning percentage of any Power 5 program in the world. They've lost more football games than anybody else in any of the Power 5 schools, right? For some reason, they've never been any good in football. I always thought they should be because the weather down there in Bloomington is probably the best in the Big Ten outside of, the California schools in Oregon and Washington now. But the old Big Ten, I always thought Bloomington had the best weather, the best temperature, cool place to, go to college. For some reason, they've never been good in football. But so now he's done a heck of a job. He's a proven coach. I think he's going to get a lot of guys between 55 and 65 head coaching jobs this year because, and versus like the Ryan Walters, 1 year as defensive coordinator type. But I like our chances. I like the fact that
Lost you. You still there?
we'll have something to, I think Ross will have it figured out. I think he's done a nice job. What's interesting is Tino Sunseri, Sal Sunseri's son. Tino, I don't know how many years Sal spent in East Lansing coaching, but Tino spent probably a few years growing up there in East Lansing at one time when Sal was coach.
Exactly right. And Tino Sunseri was a DB for Alabama back when Sal Sunseri was.
Tino was the quarterback at Pittsburgh. Vinny was the DB at Alabama.
Thank you. All right. That's why we got Nils. Nils knows all these things. He's amazing. Your thoughts on the scuffle at the end of the Michigan game and the lack of punishment from the Big Ten office? Any thoughts on that, Nils?
There's no reason to waste any energy on it. I mean, we knew it was going to happen. I mean, everyone can complain about Alan Haller. He knew it was going to happen. Me and you knew it was going to happen. It is what it is. Move on to the next day. Let's just be above the fray.
Yeah. And I know that there are some fans that want a pound of flesh from Michigan because of what happened 2 years earlier and those type of things. I talked to Alan Haller at the Fair State basketball game the other night, just briefly. And, one of the things that that he was saying was for players, when there's an altercation like that, they're usually over it, like right away. Like even if they saw somebody the next day, they'd shake hands, hey man, it's football, whatever. That's something that a lot of us, you would know, you played football at the college level. Alan Haller played, of course, at Michigan State, played the NFL. So he's looking at it from a player standpoint. He's also looking at it, he's a guy that's got a background in criminal justice, former police officer. So people that wanted Michigan State to press charges and so forth, just not realistic. First of all, Haller, he didn't say this, but you can tell he didn't. He said it on Monday that he didn't think that this situation was worthy of criminal charges, nor did he think the tunnel incident was worthy of criminal charges 2 years ago. So if he believed that from an ethical standpoint 2 years ago, he's not going to do a 180 and go against his own ethical beliefs just to get a pound of flesh out of the deal. I mean, it's a deal where, you throw sand at me at the sandbox. Now I got to throw sand at you in the sandbox. He's like you said, above the fray on those things. I think some Michigan State people that are tired of Michigan and a lot of the antics and these things over the years, they want to see someone from Michigan State get up there at the podium and pound the podium like Nikita Khrushchev and just talk about, we're mad as hell, we're not going to take it anymore, that type of stuff. Not Smith style, not Haller style. Now, if Smith's in this rivalry for a few more years and things like this keep happening, then we will, you might see him get a little more riled, but that's not his personality. The Big Ten office, Alan Haller did say that he called the Big Ten office and thought that the sportsmanship rules should be applied, which means it was suspension if you're involved in a fight, basically. And is it a fight? Big Ten said they looked at the video and they couldn't really. Basically, they said they couldn't really tell who Khalil Mullings was kicking. I think is what they didn't say it that way, but that's the way it comes across. We couldn't tell what he was kicking, so we're not going to press any, no suspensions or anything. I think that was horse crap. He should be suspended. And if there were Michigan players poured off the sideline to join this thing, I'm sure among those, I've not gone over it closely, but if players came onto the field and laid hands on somebody from the other team, then anyone who did that should have been suspended. But like you said, not going to waste a lot of time and energy on it. Haller said with a new commissioner, he was hopeful that they'd be held to the same standard. They were not. So as Jonathan Smith says, he's going to remember that thing So he'll never forget that day. And so we'll see. I mean, it was colorful. Michigan played well, took care of the ball. They scored in the red zone. Michigan State did not. And Michigan State let a great opportunity get away. I mean, if Michigan State scores that last drive, do you go for two? Do you win? If you win that game, there's no brawl, I guess, unless it goes to overtime and something else happens. If Michigan State scores on that 4th and 5, and he had Nick Marsh and press man-to-man down here and to the right, if he throws it up there and Marsh catches it, you go for two and win. Those are a lot of ifs. But if those two things happen...
You go for two. You go for two. You did a Gary Moeller. You go for two.
I think you go for two because you've got 3 timeouts left. You know, if you don't pick up the 2-point conversion, you kick it to them, and you can still have a chance to get off the field in 3 or 4 plays. So you need to get off the field in 3 plays regardless. Even if you kick the extra point and tie it up, you still need to get off the field. You won't be calling timeouts. But yeah, I think you go for 2. And if you do that and you win, I mean, the entire Michigan State football universe is different right now. And you will have beaten Michigan. There's no brawl. Michigan is reeling, and the pitchforks and the torches would be coming out there. But you lose. But Michigan State was right there. And the fact that Michigan State goes to Michigan, I realize Michigan's not great this year. But 12 months ago, if you'd have said, hey, we're going to play at Michigan and we're going to be mad that we lost, and we outgained them. We're the better team, we think. For Michigan State to do that in a matter of 12 months with Jonathan Smith taking over a program that was, rock bottom. Michigan State at the end of the year last year when they played Penn State, that's the worst Michigan State football team I've ever seen. And to take that over and 10 months later be in Ann Arbor pushing them around the field, should have won, could have won. I'm not saying they should have, but that feeling, that's a lot of progress in 10 months. Now, I realize Michigan's come down, but just beating Iowa with what they are as an established program. I realize their offense is not what it can be, and McNamara was supposed to make them better. But to beat Iowa in 10 months of program rehabilitation is pretty outstanding. Now Michigan State's got to take a next step. Beating Indiana would be a great next step. They need to tighten up some things on defense. They're a little bit loosey-goosey with some mistakes.
Hey, Jim, I'm gonna have to take this call, but I appreciate you.
All right, thanks a lot, Nils. There he goes. I'll be back in 1 second. He was talking about the spittoon. Hold on a second. Spittoon's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to play the border skirmish. Michigan State, Indiana. It's going to be a good one. And let's go over here to the comments area. Appreciate Nils calling in, joining the fun. Over in the comments area, we've got Greg Hughes. He says, hey, Chris Rose says, happy Halloween. It is happy Halloween. Kenny Jordan does a great job with us. One of our correspondents. I want to shout out to him. Also to Jason Killip doing a great job recruiting coverage, recruiting anchor for SpartanMag.com. Paul Konradek, as always, associate editor. Jake Laskawa, great intern. People say that Kenny Jordan looks like Connor Stallions a little bit. Some people say I look like Jonathan Smith. I don't know. But for Halloween, the thought struck me that I should go as Jonathan Smith and Kenny should go as Connor Stallions, and we should go door to door and see what happens in East Lansing. We're too old for that, but somebody said that. And we weren't invited to any parties. Otherwise, we could have done that at a party. But no one invited us. So, big one at Spartan Stadium this weekend. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. We'll check out some of the comments over here in the comments section in a moment. In the meantime, did you know just a few years ago, the state of Michigan ranked first in the nation for deposit container recycling? 90% of all purchased bottles and cans were being redeemed for their deposits. Today, only 73% are being redeemed. That means Michiganders are forfeiting $105 million every year in bottle and can deposits that are not being redeemed. This deficit is having a negative impact on our environment. When Michigan State's recycling rate drops, it hurts the environment, it hurts industry, and it hurts all of us. Help the environment, help the state, help yourself, take them back. They're your lakes, your roads.
Call from
Big Move.
They're your lakes, your roads, Help the environment, help your state. Take them back. Take them back. They're your lakes, your roads, your beaches, and it's your dime. So take them back. It's worth your time, and everyone will benefit. Take them back. A recycling message from Shupan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and dedicated to the Michigan State Spartans. We got Big Moob calling in. Didn't think Big Moob was going to be with us, Ron Armstrong, but he's with us, card-carrying Spartan dog. And Ron, I appreciate you giving us a call. What's on your mind? Michigan State versus Indiana. Me and my buddy Nils have been going over it a little bit. What are your thoughts about Michigan State football right now, coming out of that Michigan game, going into Indiana?
Just a quick, I thought we kind of squandered a really huge opportunity to, put the Jonathan Smith era into overdrive, if you will. But, as every week brings a new opportunity, and Indiana's a bigger challenge and a bigger opportunity. So I think that they had to turn the page and get right back after it.
Right. If you watched Indiana much, Nils and I were breaking down Indiana quite a bit. We've gone through their transfers. I think they're starting 14 transfers. They've done a good job of refurbishing that roster with a lot of James Madison transfers, a couple of Old Dominion transfers off James Madison's schedule from last year, a couple of Wake Forest transfers, guys that he's recruited in the past but could not get to James Madison, including the running back Ellison. And then, of course, the quarterback Rourke coming in from Ohio U, and Rourke brings his best receiver with him from Ohio U. So that four-pronged attack right there, James Madison players, a couple of Old Dominion players, a couple of Wake Forest players, a couple of Ohio U players, and their defensive coordinator, been doing some research on him. That defense for Indiana is excellent. The offense gets a lot of attention with what they do, play and keep away with the RPOs and everything. But top to bottom, pretty good team, 8-0. Now they can look at the schedule, and they're playing a 4-4 Michigan State team. This will be, I'm expecting this to be Indiana's toughest game of the year. They've not played a real road game yet. They played at UCLA. That place was empty. They played at Northwestern. That's on a lacrosse field. Now they're coming to a Michigan State team that's a little bit wounded and ornery and angry and pretty good. Michigan State pretty good with the run game, pretty good stopping the run. Comes down to turnovers in a lot of ways. And Michigan State in the past defense needs to cut out some of these busts they've been having. It's not a huge array of them, but enough here and there. Those big play busts, which has been a strength of Minnesota's defenses over the years when Rossi was there. So Michigan State needs to continue to do what Jonathan Smith's been pointing toward. That is to improve every week, which is kind of a cliche. But if you get a mindset going that way, Michigan State, the week before a bye week, can they rise up, play with the physicality they showed against Iowa? Will the fans show up, fill the stadium, and show the new staff what Spartan Stadium can be like in terms of a home field advantage? If those things happen, Indiana's going to have their hands full, Ron.
For sure. Listen, I think we're good enough to beat any team that's left on our schedule. But the one thing that you and I talk about is that we're really dancing on the razor blade in terms of our margin for error. So any missed field goals or delayed games in the red zone or turnovers right before the half, those kind of things you can't have when your margin for error is that small. I think Indiana presents a different challenge in that I don't know that they'll necessarily have edge in personnel or anything like that, but they are really efficient in what they do. You can tell a lot of those guys play together already because they know the system. Mm-hmm. You rarely see pre-snap penalties or guys miss a line. I mean, they're really well coached. They're really sound in what they do. They all know their assignments. So it's really, I think it's going to take 4 quarters of, and here's the thing. Let me back up. We've shown in glimpses of playing some real high-level efficient football. You and I talked. That drive we put together when we were down 24-10 to Michigan, that's an impressive drive. Yeah. We put together we've shown, pockets and pieces of really high-level efficient football. And it comes back to what you said, just improving every week and putting that game behind you, getting back out to their practice field and getting better. And I think we have a chance to win this game. I don't see Indiana as this juggernaut that we don't belong in the field with or anything by that sort of imagination. It really comes down to us and how we perform and how we clean up some of those unforced errors and things like that.
Yeah, that touchdown drive that Michigan State had down 24-10, the patience, the methodical drive. There was a 3rd and 10 at their own 38-yard line, and they handed it off to Carter. It was the 3rd time in that game when they handed it off on 3rd and long, gain of 14. That was with 10 minutes to go 10 minutes to go, down by 14, and Michigan State running the ball on 3rd and 10 from their own 38-yard line. I assume they're thinking 2-down territory anyway. And Michigan State saw something. First of all, I think Michigan State did not have a lot of confidence that they'd be able to pass protect on 3rd and 8 against those guys. And Michigan, they'd get into man-to-man in those situations most of the time, and they had a lot of defensive linemen up in 2-point stances, of very much a pass rush stature and attitude. So Michigan State clipped off 4 running plays in those situations, 3 of which picked up long yardage first downs. I don't know if Childs had a chance to get out of those plays or if those plays were called 100%. There are times when Childs can get to a different play. Sometimes it might just be flipping a run from left to right. But Michigan State ran those plays, and whether he got into those plays or kept the play on, I don't know. But Childs did not have his greatest game through the air, but I think that there were some run play decisions that Childs was making that I think were pretty good. I'm guessing, I don't know that for a fact. But those are, Michigan State, with their overall game plan, there were some quirky things going on, and, a lot of people think they didn't throw deep enough. And I would agree with that for a Michigan State team that will air it out and has thrown deep a lot this year, and they did it at Oregon State a lot. I thought that it was curious that Michigan State did not go deep more often. They had that 3rd and long that they converted with Montori Foster in the slot fade, maybe slot flag, maybe a bow. I'm not really sure what it was, but he was open. And when I went back and looked at it, I'm like, man, he was open by a step and a half. If that pass is perfect, it's a touchdown. That's what I was thinking. And then I asked Aiden Childs about it on Tuesday, and he said, yeah, that should have been a touchdown. Now it's 3rd and long. Michigan State needs to convert there. So, accuracy is the better part of valor on a situation like that. Childs has overthrown open guys this year, Foster 3 or 4 times. So he's trying to throw a perfect pass there, but it's better to be a little bit short than a little bit long. A little bit long is an incompletion. A little bit short, he comes back and makes the catch. But Marsh was open, and we've seen that all year. Michigan State getting receivers open did not happen on that 4th down situation. But Childs, not his best passing attack game, but Michigan State had success in the running game, and don't overlook Childs being a part of it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I think I've said this before. I will, regardless of the outcome of the game last weekend, there was a lot of guys who I think walked off the field feeling like they played well enough for us to win that game.
Yes.
And that's something to build on. Hey, listen, clean up the little things, and we're on our way. There's no, consolation prize or anything like that, but you can still get better in defeat. And I think we saw that in the Oregon game. We saw it in the Ohio State game, and we're going to see some of that again this weekend. Again, I don't think Indiana's pass rushers are as good as what we're going to see. What we saw against Michigan, I don't think their D tackles are as good as what we're going to see. So there are going to be some opportunities to make some plays offensively. Where I think we're going to be challenged more so is clearly on the defensive end. Their offense is really efficient. They do a lot of things, a lot of eye candy. So a lot of those shifts and switch releases and things that we kind of messed up some of the communication on last weekend, gotta get that cleaned up because we're going to see that all game. So if you're not ready for it, Malik Spencer or back 7 guys, eye discipline. Was it the alignment, assignment, and attitude? We got to have all 3 of those in the right, on the right, all 11 guys with the right disposition pre-snap. Make the right checks because that offense is going to challenge us.
Mm-hmm. And Indiana's been over 500 yards offense pretty much every week. But last week, Washington held them to 312 yards of offense. Washington outgained them 318 to 312. Stopping the run is going to be so important. That's the first thing. They run inside zone. Their offensive linemen, 4 of them are holdover Indiana guys. They have transfers all over the program, but offensive line, they've got 4 holdover guys that are decent. The left tackle, is it the left tackle or right tackle? Wedig, he transfers in from Wisconsin. Former starter who was a second stringer last year at Wisconsin. Former 4-star. He, I think, is right tackle. Other than that, it's Indiana guys. Their offensive line is pretty good. They'll run a lot of inside zone. And if Michigan State can keep that stacked up and stop the run, that's the first step toward it because they spread you out. They'll spread you out to run. Michigan State, if they get spread out, they won't get caught chasing their tail there. They want to stop the run first. So I don't think some teams want to stop the pass first, and that's when they start clipping off runs against you. I think Michigan State can contain the run, and then from there, like you're saying, the eye candy, the RPO game, keeping it in front, getting strong in the red zone, and of equal importance, the greatest team sport known to mankind on the offensive side of the ball. Run the ball, get balance, get Marsh back involved, get Childs rolling again. An overlooked stat, yes, Michigan State outgained Michigan on the run in the ground game. Michigan State, I know they netted 163 yards on the ground on offense, but Michigan State gained 193 yards on the ground. They lost 30 in sacks, which is not part of the ground game, right? But they gained 193 against Michigan. A good running attack. And I went back and looked at it. That opening drive, Michigan was getting an eighth guy in the box the first 3 or 4 plays of the game. They're rotating in safety down at the snap. Played cover 3 on one time with 8 in the box. Michigan State, 212 yards rushing against Iowa, 193 in gains against Michigan. Now they're playing an Indiana team that is number 1 in the Big Ten in rushing defense, who has not played anybody of this caliber yet. 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have thought that Michigan State would be, quote, of this caliber, but Michigan State in the ground game now twice in a row is, quote, of this caliber. Now can Michigan State answer that bell and show that physicality that they showed coming out of the bye week, the physicality that they showed in the rivalry game. Now coming back home, the home juice will help. And Indiana's going to see a good running attack to challenge a run defense that has not seen good quality bona fide running attack yet. Hey, the running back from Washington was good. He ran for over 100 yards against them, but they got behind and couldn't quite totally balance that thing out and couldn't really ride that run later in the game. So Michigan
Honestly,
State.
That's what I was going to say about Indiana. That was the point I was going to make about Indiana's run defense. They've been up big so early.
Yeah.
That it's taken a lot of the run. The teams have gone into pass mode. So early in the game. So I don't even know if you really can. Make of their run defense.
But the per carry average is low, so it's not just total yards rushing. Also, yards per carry, it's better than anyone in the Big Ten so far against a weak schedule.
Sure, but you look at that sample size. I mean, how many attempts are they seeing? I mean, if you see 8 attempts, and I get 6 yards, it skews the numbers. My point is, when you're ahead, for most teams, it takes the running game out of it. So, that's part of it. But the other part is, again, look at the schedule. I don't know how many top rushing attacks they played against. These things all matter. My point is, and to your point, we've gotten it done against 2 D lines that those guys are going to be playing on Sundays. So regardless of what Indiana has done, who they played, I doubt we'll see better D linemen than we saw in the last 2 weeks. And the interior of our offensive line has been mashing people in the run game. And it's impressive to see. I mean, something happened over that bye week. I mean, it's like they flipped the switch and they're physical and they're getting after me with that interior of that offensive line in the run game. It's just moving bodies.
Now, can they get that type of midseason improvement in pass protection?
That's the next step. That's the next step. I mean, if we move the seismic shift we've made in our interior run blocking. If we have half of that in our pass pro, I'm just going to tell you this. This is my opinion. If our pass pro improves 50% of what the run blocking did, I don't know that we lose another game the rest of the year.
Right. I would agree with that. And the pass protection needs to happen right now. I'm telling you what, this guy, number 6 for them, Kamara, he's not Stewart, but he's different. He's good. He's thick. He's 6'1", 265, kind of a squatty body type of guy. Agile, low to the ground, changes direction. He's a handful. Indiana leads the Big Ten in sacks. Again, schedule asterisk on that. And these defensive tackles, solid, man. Number 8, C.J. West, 6'2", 317. He's a holdover. He's been a Hoosier for a long time from Chicago Nazareth Academy and was a 3-star recruit. Actually, he transferred from Kent State, I think, 2 years ago. And the other defensive tackle, 99 Carpenter, 6'2", 288. Does not have great size. Transfer from James Madison, second team all Sun Belt. He's sturdy inside. He's not what Michigan has, but between those two and Kamara, and those guys are pretty good. And it's a one gapping outfit, so Michigan State needs to show they can block one gapping scheme with fast flow linebackers. A little bit different that way. So styles make fights. That part's going to be different. Indiana's defense statistically has been very good. And I tell you something else. Their defensive coordinator, it's a 40 defense, they're 4 down linemen, which you don't see a lot of these days. And they don't do much pre-snap. They don't mug up. They don't stem and shift. They'll do stunts. They're active after the snap. Defensive coordinator, Bryant Haynes, is from Piqua, Ohio. Played at Ball State. Somehow he got mixed up with Cignetti. years ago, and he's been defensive coordinator at James Madison for the last 5 years. Younger guy, and his defenses in the FCS ranked in the top 10 2019 through 2023. So it's a lower-level young coach whose coordinator chops are being tested at the Big Ten level, and he's doing well. Last year, James Madison ranked number 1 in the FBS. They were FBS last year. They were no longer Division I AA. They were number against the Sun Belt schedule, of course, but they have Sun Belt players against Sun Belt players. They were number 1 in the FBS in rushing defense last year. James Madison was, averaging 61.5 yards per game. And they led the FBS last year in tackles for loss per game at 9.1. So this is a team that specializes in stopping the run, specializing in one-gap aggressiveness, specializes in the tackle for loss, which matches up exactly with what some of Michigan State's previous weaknesses were against one-gapping teams. So Michigan State's rush defense has come a long way. Now can they do it against this team with that resume and against a poor schedule, a weaker schedule? Can Michigan State do that? I think it's a fascinating matchup, the game within the game. Can Michigan State continue to run the ball like they have? Do they have that physicality to continue to bring it against a team that I think has good individuals and a good scheme? It's just really interesting football. We're going to learn a lot about both teams.
Absolutely. I think really also, I think just we really got to get out to a fast start. When I say fast, I mean necessarily, up big, but just control shorten the game, control the clock. Indiana wants to get into a track meet. And I don't know if our offense is where we can win a track meet with a team that scored almost 50 points a game.
Right.
But we can run the football and come away with points, touchdowns. And let me back up. Red zone.
Yeah.
For us is red zone.
Yeah.
We have to find a way. And I personally, I think we got to become a little bit more aggressive as soon as we get to probably about plus 35. Instead of waiting till we get, to the 20. I think we got to start stretching the field, targeting those end zone shots as soon as we cross midfield. Start getting our aggressive red zone sort of approach. I think we're still too, it felt like to me, just to back a little, felt like that Michigan was okay with us moving the ball in between the 30s. And they kind of hunkered down a little bit once we got in the red zone. Maybe that's just me projecting, but it's what it felt like. Having said that, we all witnessed how much we struggled in the red zone. So I think we need to be a bit more aggressive in our play calling before we get there.
Yeah.
As soon as we're, plus 30, plus 35, start attacking that thing, and put some points and some touchdowns on the board and make the other team play with some game pressure for a change.
Yeah, you got a quarterback with an arm, and you got Marsh, who's he's a freshman, but he's kind of a mismatch guy. And the one thing about against Iowa, Michigan State struggled in the red zone in that game as well with all the field goals. But when they changed it up and went on a 1st and 10 corner route to Isaiah Johnson from, I think, 20 or 25 yards. We talked about that last week. That's the Bill Walsh West Coast offense theory. It's easier to score a touchdown from 25 yards than it is from 5 yards. That's to your point. Also, a lot of teams, 1st and 10s between the 40-yard line. That's a great time to go deep. And Michigan State's a team that's gone deep a lot this year. Did not do it last week for whatever reason. I know they looked to go deep a couple times and it wasn't there. Partly the pass protection is a concern. And quite frankly, the turnover, which was one of the turning points of the game at the end of the first half when Aiden Childs was sacked from behind for the fumble, they were looking deep on that play, I'm pretty sure. So they did look deep a few times. Sometimes it wasn't there. Sometimes the pass protection wasn't trusted. But the red zone offense, number 129 in the country in red zone touchdown percentage, which is ironic because last year they were in the high 70s at Oregon State, which is one of the best in the country. That's supposed to be something that they specialize in. Jack Velling was great as a receiver in the red zone last year for Oregon State. He dropped one on the goal line earlier in the year, but that has not come around as a red zone plus. Last week, you get down there. And, Jonathan Smith said, I went back and watched, a lot of you watched it on TV, the interview that Jonathan Smith had between the first and second quarter. He said, we got too gimmicky down there, 1st and 10 at the 6-yard line. They ran an end around to Montori Foster. He gains about 3 yards. Then they run a counter toss that gains a couple yards down to the 2-yard line. 3rd down, they passed it, incompletion. Then on 4th down, they were going to go for it and then had the delay of game penalty. And Smith said, we're a little too gimmicky out wide when they got inside the 10-yard line. That's one thing about Smith. I mean, he's basically saying he didn't love the play calling there. Now, he's got right of refusal on those things, and he and Lindgren are a great combination. They've been together for a long time. But He's not afraid to tell you what's on his mind in those situations. And, if they had been pounding the run between the tackles all the way down there, and then they tried to go around it, maybe they had too much respect for Grant and Graham at that point when it's first and goal to 6. But we're talking about red zone problems piece by piece. You look at where they were stopped. Well, on that opening drive that we all agree was very important, Michigan State kind of went wide with what Smith said were gimmicky things. So that was one of the red zone failures, which turned out to be something that remained a problem the rest of the game. But that's why that one was stopped. Red zone offense has got to get better, no question about that.
And again, like the overall efficiency of the offense, also just one of those things where you're playing a high power offense like Indiana's. We got to hold serve, and I thought last week we had some opportunities to put points on the board. Make them play with some game pressure, and you look up and we've kind of dominated the play, and it's 7-0. That's your one tip ball away from being tied, 2 tip balls away from being behind. It sort of played out that way. This week we're playing a far more confident offense. So I don't know. Again, maybe this is just me projecting, but it felt like that game plan last week was a bit conservative. Like we're trying to protect the quarterback a little bit. I don't think we can come out there this weekend and be as conservative because Indiana's coming out done it. And we're going to have to match that with intensity. We're going to have to match that with discipline. And we're definitely going to have to match that with offensive efficiency in the red zone.
Right. Red zone, Michigan State takes a 7-0 lead on that one. They gained, Michigan State had a 3rd and 9 at the 45-yard line in that touchdown drive. That was one of those cases in which Carter had an inside run. Actually, it was outside zone for a gain of 34. That was one of those situations, 3rd and 9. They get down there and they go for it on 4th and 1. Earlier in that drive, Childs hooked up with Marsh on a crossing route, and it was high and behind him, but you might remember Nick Marsh went up and snagged that ball for a gain of 15. That was against the 5-man rush, so they had a little bit of time to find his guy on that one. And then 4th and 1, Nate Carter, touchdown, Baldwin pulling, power. Your guy, Newman, really cleared out the defensive tackle on that one. And I will say Lepo and Ramil did a good job run blocking on that one, sealing out Graham and the other guy, Graham and Grant. They were out at defensive end on that play, and Baldwin did a good job on that one. So that's a red zone plus. Later in the game, the next red zone opportunity, first drive of the second half, down 16-7, 3rd and 1 at the 26-yard line. And Baldwin was beaten by one gapping defensive tackle for loss. And now it's 4th and 3, and you kick the field goal. Somebody had a 46-yarder on that. I guess the field goal was a 46-yarder. But the 3rd and 1 stoppage at the 26-yard line, underscoring red zone problems. Not only red zone problems, but the tackle for loss problem, which has not been a problem in the last 2 games, but it was right there, an expensive 3rd and 1. You pick that up, it's 1st and 10 to the 25-yard line, down 16-7. You got a chance to maybe cut it 16-4. Those are those little games within the game that mean so much. The next time Michigan State had the ball, they punted, and first play of the drive, false start. And it stalls the drive. But then, 2nd and 8, they run a tunnel screen. 2nd and 8, a little short completion. 3rd and 6, they run a speed out for Isaiah Johnson, incomplete. Tunnel screens, speed outs. That gets back to what you're talking about, some of the conservatism. Maybe they didn't trust the pass protection. I'm not sure. Next time they have the ball, it's that great methodical drive where they score a touchdown. But even on that, when it's 3rd and 12 at the 20-yard line, they go to the air with Marsh, slant, breaks a tackle, touchdown. Then the next time they have the ball, they go down there and they get stopped on 4th and 6th. And the 2 plays before that, false start to make it 1st and 15. So, you're talking about stoppages. The false starts came into play there, but also the speed out and the tunnel screen. Not really what Michigan State had done earlier in the year in terms of like hard fake, half roll, stretching the field. Again, maybe they didn't have confidence in the pass rush. It'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend because, like I said, number 6 for them is a good pass rusher. Indiana leads the Big Ten in sacks. Michigan State's been a team all year that's like, hey, we do what we do. We don't care if you're Oregon or whatever. 4th and 2, we're going deep. Against Michigan, not so much. Now at home against Indiana, yeah, you got good pass rush numbers. We don't care. We're still going to go maximum protects, half roll deep, at least once a quarter. So do they get back to that? I suspect that they might.
I'll tell you one thing I will say our offensive line will have a better – put it this way. They won't see linebackers that can run like that. Those Michigan linebackers can run. There's a couple 2-3 plays where they just they just ran past the lineman on a screen or a pulling lineman that the speed of the linebackers got there before the play could develop. I don't know that Indiana has that sort of foot speed with their linebackers. So some of those screen plays and bubble screens and things that didn't work may be there this weekend.
Right. Uh-huh. Good point. That gets back to the fact, something I was talking about last week. When you watched Michigan, even though they were struggling, there were times earlier in the season when the talent does flash. That's what you're talking about, things like that. Their talent does flash. And now that they have the quarterback situation straightened out, they never should have went away from Davis Warren after that Arkansas State game. I think they might have beaten Washington and beaten Illinois if they'd have stayed with him. I'm not saying he's great, but they pulled the plug on him too early. But they're a different team with him when he's throwing like that. He's not great, but he's pretty good. Combine that with
I don't know. You know what? We have to do that again, because I've been in a lot of basketball games and football games and things like where a guy has a career night. And everybody's like, well, he couldn't. Yeah, it just might have been the stars might have been aligned perfectly for him. Because if you think about it, they scored on a halfback pass.
Yes.
And they scored on a 8-yard red zone toss.
It wasn't like he was out, little 15-yard sneaker out.
Yeah, so it wasn't like he was out here Dan Marino from the pocket. They called a great game plan for him. They made him easy throws, easy reads, timely trick plays. So I don't know how often you can throw a perfect game and have him be right every weekend. That everything fell perfectly for it. Just think about it. No sacks, no penalties, no turnovers. Come on, I mean that everything went perfectly for and they won by 7. So I don't necessarily know that Davis Warren would have been this Davis Warren. And if he had been playing all year, maybe our defensive plan or game plan's different. So every week just kind of stands on its own. But your point's taken. He's better than what they've been trotting out. He looks, I wouldn't say better, look more competent as a passer than what they've been trotting out, weeks prior to that. But that's not to say that they would be any different or any better if he'd been playing all year. I'm not willing to give that to him, because now you have more film on Davis Warren. Some of those trick plays aren't as likely to work.
I thought he had a couple real good third down completions, just a couple of them. And a couple of those when he was rolling out to his right, which is something he showed in the Texas game. I know a lot of people didn't watch the second half of the Texas game, but he had a couple of nice on-the-run completions in that game. I watched that the night before the game last Friday, and I was like, this guy gives them the best chance to win. If I were Michigan State,
you know what's funny? They have a play. I'm actually convinced it's a play call now, because every single one of their quarterbacks does it, and it's so unconventional that it's gonna work. That's that rolling out and then throwing back across the middle. I mean, that's a play call. That guy's there every time. That's not a scramble rule. That's a play call. They're getting flow all the way to the field, to the sideline, and that guy's just sitting out inside the hash, inside the near hash. Because the flow is going to mirror the quarterback and mirror the receivers. That backside receiver or tight end is just sitting inside the hash. I mean, that's a neat wrinkle. That it just goes against any kind of conventional wisdom of playing offense. You tell your quarterback not to throw across their body back to the middle of the field.
Reminds me of old Brigham Young, like Lavelle Edwards stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's his face used some. Joe Tiller used to do some similar stuff too. Yeah. I mean, it's a neat wrinkle, and I mean, you got it now. It's on film, so these things now, defensive coordinators are alerting to it, but in a one game situation, that was a neat wrinkle. But back to this defense, I think, like you said, on an individual level, I don't think we'll see individual high-end talent that we saw, on the field last weekend. We'll see probably more cohesive unit, across the board. But I don't think we'll see individual talent, and I honestly think we lost to individual talent. I think their top talent won the game for them. So, I think we got to. If I were handicapping this, if this thing stays under 30, 28, 24, we can win that game.
Mm-hmm. And, Michigan State's been on the field with Oregon, Ohio State, and the talent level of Michigan. Indiana, like you said, a well-put-together package. But if Indiana loses this game, there's going to be a lot of people nationally that'll be like, oh, yeah, well, of course. Michigan State's had a tough schedule. They played pretty well. They traded punches pretty well despite the score against Oregon and Ohio State. It would make sense for that to happen that way. Let me say also, Donovan Edwards, 9 carries, 24 yards, 2.7 per carry. Khalil Mullings last week, 13 carries, 21 yards, 1.4 per carry. Those two heralded tailbacks, Mullings and Edwards, 2.7 and 1.4. Michigan State stopping the tailback run. The quarterback run got out, but stopping the tailback run That's the type of thing that is you can't fake that. There's no fluke.
No,
There's no fluke
exactly.
about that, and that's the type of thing that can carry over from week to week to week. Indiana's got a real good
Exactly.
running back. Mullings coming in, or Ellison transferring in from Wake Forest. Good running back, good running attack. But if Michigan State has the physicality and the motivational things all on straight, they should be able to stop this run. But Michigan State's run defense, holding those two tailbacks, but letting the quarterback get out. Your thoughts on the run defense?
But again, we've been sound, and some of those, and again, some of those running plays that leaked out was probably a gap error or a misalignment.
Yeah.
It just we haven't really been, folks haven't, didn't line up last week. They didn't line up and move us. They didn't line up and move us off the ball. Some of that stuff was, misalignment and misassignments, stuff like that. So again, if we're sound physically, I like our abilities in this game. I don't think we're going to lose this game on physical talent, and we won't be wowed by that. So Indiana's got their work cut out for them. I mean, we do too, but I can see us winning this game, Con.
Yeah. And the quarterback run game not going to be as much of a factor in this game unless Jackson plays. He can run a little bit. Rourke's not going to run much if he plays. The quarterback run game, Michigan's first drive of the second half, Orji got outside for like a 26-yard gain, and you mentioned it before, run gaps and so forth, and you and I talked about it on the phone a couple days ago. Charles Brantley, who's having a really good season on that particular play, Michigan State's in cover 4, if I remember right. He came in a little too thin and lost contain, and the safety, Martinez, came in a little too thin, lost contain, got out, got down the sideline. A key play and a key drive for a run defense that was good all year, or all game. That one hurt. An explosive play leads to a scoring drive. And then, the touchdown, I think Michigan State, the quarterback keeper touchdown, I don't know if it's fourth down or third down, but Michigan had all their blocking, the strength of the formation, two tight ends to the left. They kept it to the right behind Mullings, +1 quarterback keeper. Hard to stop those things down there to keep them out, goal line stand play after play.
I watched that play about 3 different times. I was trying to figure out why our linebackers when they snapped the ball went the opposite direction of the play.
Is that what they did?
Yeah, I have no idea if we were guessing run blitz one direction, but on the snap of the ball, Matthews takes a step to the defensive right, which would mean, the opposite direction of where the quarterback went. He was outflanked as soon as before the ball didn't snap. He just kind of flowed the wrong direction, and it was a walk-in. And Halliday actually hits the gap, and with the wrong shoulder, so he ends up taking away everybody else's angle. So it was a couple of different little errors that you clean those up. That play's probably tackled. It's probably tackled as a 1-yard gain.
Was that third down or fourth down? Was that third down or fourth down?
I think it was 3rd and 5. Yeah, 3rd and 5. And even with that false step, Matthews almost made the tackle.
Yeah. Let me see here. It was 3rd and goal at the 2-yard line.
3rd and goal at the 2.
Yeah, that quarterback sweep.
If you watch that play, Matthews takes a false step to the wrong direction, and he's outflanked, and he still almost gets there. But Halliday gets blocked inside, and he takes out Matthews and I think Spencer's angle.
Mm-hmm. And a point that someone made on our message board, I went back and looked at it again because it's happening so fast when the game's going on. But when Michigan got the ball back after Michigan State's last offensive drive failed, Michigan State getting a stop, timeout, getting a stop, timeout, getting a stop, timeout. It's 3rd and 5 if Michigan gets a first down, game over. And Michigan State was, I don't know if you went back and looked at it, but it looked to me like Michigan State's in cover 4 with 2 safeties deep and the corners peeling off. Orgy's on the field. Michigan State basically looks to me like they're kind of playing the pass, or they're being honest against the pass. Someone on our message board said, why aren't you more deliberate to stop the run? And that's a good point. I thought Michigan State was for Orgy being on the field, knowing a quarterback keeper was probably coming. I think Michigan State to do it over again would probably go with a different alignment and different attitude on that one, a different approach.
I'm gonna have to ask around. I was wondering if that was a missed call or something. Like, that was a check with me, depending on what quarterback was in.
Yeah, and they can see Orgy's in there. We heard that the helmet mic was not working earlier in the game. I'm not sure if that was the case then, but did you go back and look at that? We talked about it before.
Yeah, I did. I wonder if that was a check with me that 'cause there's no way you're in too high. If they come out with that kid in the game and we're in press man and they throw and they complete and win the game, you tip your cap to them.
You know they're not throwing with that kid there, right?
Right. You tip your cap to them. Hey, great call, coach. You guys won it. But there's no way you can get caught in too high I mean,
If nothing,
the
I
run
think
probability with that quarterback is, I mean, somewhere upwards of 95, 97%. Like, they're not throwing that football. So I'm thinking that might have been a check that we're, based on personnel. Like, hey, if this guy's out there, we're going to go here. And it didn't get communicated. That would be my guess.
I would expect zero safeties or zero deep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
more so
yeah.
than
I
two
mean,
deep.
maybe one high. You play
Maybe.
one high,
Yeah.
but he's probably 8 yards off the ball.
Yes,
He's
charging
slightly
fast.
past line. He's slightly past linebacker depth, and he's just pounding. Like
Charging
he's not.
fast.
Yeah.
And if they do that, I think they stop that play if they do that. And they get the ball back. And they get the ball back.
Even if you check to that, because the Michigan might have taken a timeout. Who knows? I mean, even if you check to that, they come out too high, we're going to drop down. Or maybe it's supposed to be a late. I'll say something. Hold on. Maybe it was supposed to be a late adjustment, because I do know this, and you and I talked about this and all week, that Michigan quick snapped a couple of times.
Yeah.
They quick snapped a couple of times, and I wonder maybe they went on a quicker cadence where we didn't get a chance to kind of bounce the safety down. I don't know, but a too high look in that situation, I'm hard to press to find a reason why we would be in that call.
Yeah, it seems like there should be an explanation for that, but didn't really get one this week.
Then on the other play we talked about where they scored a touchdown with it went short motion in the tight end.
Yeah,
it looked like the corner tried to check to something, and I don't know that Malik got the check. But if you look at the motion, Woods definitely makes a gesture like he's calling something.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't see if Spencer echoed the call or not.
Okay. And that tight end, they quick motion,
yeah.
Right after the motion, boom,
yeah, it was
ball
quick,
snap.
Yeah, quick snap. Yeah, quick snap. Yep, quick snap. Yep.
Tight end shows run block for an instant, then sprint leak to the corner. Testing Michigan State to see whether or not they got it filtered out and diagnosed. When all of a sudden the number one receiver to the boundary was a tight end, which can be a little confusing for corners and safety sometimes. And they gave Michigan State a real quick puzzle right there. Michigan State didn't solve the puzzle. Touchdown. So credit to Michigan on that one. A red zone ploy that they're not running that on 2nd and 5 at the 40-yard line.
No.
So good on them. They made a nice play there. Michigan State gets the ball back, down to the end of the game. The game-ending drive. It ends up with that 4th and 6 at the 16-yard line. Prior to that, on 1st and 10, 21-yard line, on 3rd and 10, they had just that pass to Nathan Carter on 3rd and 10 with 3:57 to go. Just great play by Nathan Carter, breaking tackles, keeping his balance down to the 21-yard line. At this point, Michigan State's going in. I mean, it's 1st and 10, 21, all the momentum. Michigan's on their heels, up by 7. This thing's getting away from Michigan. It's getting tight in that stadium. 1st and 10, outside zone, gain of 3. Carter just spent a lot of energy on that. I guess you can stay with the hot back there, but gain of 3. 2nd and 7, 18-yard line, a lot of momentum. False start.
Yep.
And I don't think that was a crowd noise one. That looked like a snap count one to me. It didn't look like, that was Ramil. He's had a good season. He's come along nicely. Struggled in this game in some areas there. That one ended up that decreased Michigan State's chances of getting this first down and winning this game. Now it's 2nd and 12.
Mm-hmm.
2nd and 12. He's got Velling open in man-to-man on a crossing route. Misses him. He's open. Misses him high. So then Childs had a chance to make up for that error. That should be. And Childs mentioned it in interviews on Tuesday. He said, I had Velling on that one. Missed him. So Michigan State falling short of making plays. False start, then you miss an open receiver. Now it's 3rd and 12, and then against cover 4, they check it down to Montori Foster to get half of it on a hitch to set up 4th and 6. And we've talked about this 4th and 6. And it's 2 deep, man under. They're only rushing 4, and to Michigan's credit, they've got confidence they can get a pass rush with 4, which gives them 7 in the back, which is an advantage to the defense anytime and they do get a pass rush. Lepo gets beat, and Ramil gets beat by Stewart. So both tackles get beat right away. And I asked Childs about that on Tuesday. I said, other than not having time to throw, what did you see on that play? And he said something along the lines of, I would have liked to, the play wasn't necessarily great for the situation, the play call or whatever. Jonathan Smith said after the game, that's a play that's worked for us in the past, so we went to it and it didn't get anything open. The interesting thing was the read progression, and I never got a chance to ask Childs about the read progression. And sometimes they're not going to say That's one of the things I used to like back in the old days with the Brad Salem. I could ask him maybe the week after, sometimes 2 weeks after, what was going on that. And he might say, no, the read was right. But, there's explanations for everything most of the time. On this one, his first read, he looked over to Jack Velling. And Michigan State's got the ball on the right hash. And Velling is running an out to the left, which is a really steep, difficult angle in man-to-man. And is he looking over there to move the safeties to come back in the other direction? Maybe. I don't know. But he looked at Velling for quite a while like he was thinking about throwing over there. And quite a while, like a beat or two, because the pass protection is blowing up. If the pass protection had been good, does he look at Velling and then come back to somebody else? I don't know. But never got a chance to look at him. He scrambles, and now it's scramble rules. But on that one, as you and I have talked about before, Nick Marsh was over here and pressed man-to-man against number 12, who's their replacement corner, who had a couple pass interferences the week before. Pressed man-to-man, number 6 against that guy. Now there's 2 safeties, so you're the quarterback. You know that Marsh is running the go route. What you don't know is if the safety's going to get over the top. You assume he is. Michigan State's running a running back insert, so again, like I say, it's easy for me to say when I'm, drinking coffee and eating donuts to look in the to have the clicker in slow motion and to say and to think what maybe he should have done. But I'm thinking that when they got back in the film room, that they may have wanted Childs. Didn't have much time, but look at that running back insert or anything to get that safety to move over a little bit, but going to 6 all the way and press. Now, if it's incomplete, then a lot of us are saying, why on 4th and 6 are you running what basically amounts to a press low percent, a fade low percentage type of thing? I mean, Wanstead got killed for that at Pittsburgh one time on 3rd and 4th down, throwing fades at the end of a game and losing. But Marsh, press,
because
and why are they looking at Velling right away unless they're moving safeties? I'm just not clear on all that. What do you got on that?
Well, the answer to, if anyone says why are you throwing a fade to number 6, because the answer to that question is, in key moments you think players not plays.
Yeah.
So I'll take my shot with 6, on the jump ball on that play.
Yes.
So that's the answer to that. My takeaway from that play is, again, this is just watching it, the TV view. This is why we side all 22 sometimes. Like sometimes it tells a different story. But just the TV view of it, it kind of looked like our receivers and our quarterbacks weren't on the same page of down the distance, that it wasn't a goal, like a 4th and goal situation, that we could get a first down.
Right.
Because if I remember the replay, all of them were in the end zone.
Yeah. It's 4th and 6. The running back was running a little insert. I guess he's kind of an option, but he's just running. He's probably in for pass protection. Linebackers don't go, so he just kind of inserts. But yeah,
that thing, like when Childs leaks out, they're all 3 of the receivers are on the same plane in the end zone.
Yes, they were, as if it were 4th and goal for the 16.
Right. So it wasn't 4th and goal.
No, it was not.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's that. Like, again, I'm not in the huddle. I don't know if it's specifics of it, but just looking at that, it felt like just that's my initial reaction. Those guys weren't aware that it was 4th and 6. But that aside, you got the ball, especially after 6 runs this slant route and shakes people and gets in the end zone.
Yes.
If we threw 4 straight over there to him and we lost the game for 4 straight over there, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, he was not targeted much, and Smith was asked about that. If they did anything to take him away, and he said they rolled it over a little bit, but not a lot. Smith said they didn't really do a whole lot to take him away. On that one, Velling runs that out route. I didn't look to see whether that might have been an option route where he had an option to come in if it's outside leverage on that. I don't know. Usually man-to-man, if you get man-to-man, there's usually a man beater in somewhere in the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
You might have zone beaters on one side and man beaters on the other side. And a lot of times, 4th and 6, what a lot of teams do, they'll run mesh concept crossing routes, running away from man-to-man in a 6-yard situation like that.
Right.
It didn't work.
You might run 6-yard stop routes, anything that's going to get you to pass the change. But just, moving the chains is the important. I mean, obviously, if you're wide open, you're going to take the touchdown, but we got to get a first down first. You're thinking first down first there.
Yeah. Stop routes sometimes can be tough against man-to-man unless you really charge them and can plant and come back a little bit. But that's if it's zone.
Right.
Maybe stop routes on one side and man beaters on the other. I don't know. But didn't end up with a real good shot on that play. And I know ifs and buts and all that stuff, but, man, Marsh against that guy, you score a touchdown there, go for 2, and you win that game, and there's no brawl. Now, Michigan might get the ball back, and the dude might come back and hit a 60-yard field goal and beat you. I don't know. But
Right.
Michigan State really close to having a different universe today. But they got a chance to against Indiana to feel good with a really tough assignment. And the physicality component, what are you expecting? Do you think Michigan State's going to come out and answer the bell one more time with a lot of physicality like they did against Iowa?
I have no doubt that this team's going to answer the bell. And, I've been saying it for 2, 3 years now, that regardless of the situation, these kids just keep getting up off the mat. So I have no doubts in my mind that they're going to get up and they're going to be ready for this game. I suspect they're going to come out with a lot of juice, because I think if we're sitting here, we didn't watch all the game film they watched, post, after the games. They saw the plays that they left on the field, the opportunities they left on the field. They can't wait to get back out there this weekend and get that taste out of their mouth and get a home win in front of the home fans and celebrating, in the end zone and all that good stuff. So I expect our kids to be ready to go.
And Nils asked me earlier how many snaps Michigan State played on defense. I looked it up. I forgot to mention to him. But Michigan State played 53 snaps on defense last week against Michigan. Not a huge number. Number. So
and as many guys as we play, those D linemen got to be feeling pretty fresh this week.
Right. They don't have Jordan Turner for the first half. That's going to hurt a little bit. I expect Jordan Hall is going to be starting next to Halliday. What do you feel about that?
I mean, you guys want 7 on the field. That guy's tough. He's been nails for this defense, coordinates getting us lined up. But if there's a kid who if you're gonna have a backup come off the bench, it ain't bad. It ain't bad having 5 come in there. I thought he's last couple of weeks. I thought he's improved. He's turning into a linebacker. He was a football player before. Now he's learning the finer points of linebacker, playing the position, and I think he's ready. I think we're ready to turn him loose.
One last thing, Indiana 8-0, toast of the town. A lot of pressure, building pressure now, and a different type of pressure against a desperate Michigan State team who's traded blows with some good, talented teams this year. As a former player, I'm just wondering about this. Rourke, quarterback. I don't know who Ohio played last year. Let me look it up. If he's able to play. I know the Jackson kid played a little bit last year, and he's played in Big Ten environments. You know where I'm getting at with this.
Sure, absolutely.
You've got a ton of James Madison players playing key roles in this play, and in this situation. I'm sure they're fired up. I'm sure they're excited. The quarterback and the wide receiver, coming in from Ohio University. Surratt, the wide receiver, coming in from James Madison. I think, 14, 10, 12, a couple of guys from Old Dominion. They've not had a difficult road environment yet. They've played at UCLA. They've played at Northwestern. Now you've got a lot of guys, and they're good, but coming in from, an FCS type of background. I know that James Madison was FBS last year. Last year, Ohio University, they played at Florida Atlantic, at Bowl. They didn't on the road last year. Ohio University had Iowa State at home. They played at San Diego State. Anyway, my point is the quarterback Rourke did not play quarterback last year in a difficult road environment. Mm-hmm. Now he's going on the road. A lot of these guys, they've got this increasing different type of pressure. I don't know if it's pressure. All right, well, they played at Penn State 2 years ago, so he's experienced it once before. Let me see how he did that day. He was 14 out of 30 for 119 yards against Penn State. Great pass rush, understandable. So he's been on the field before at Beaver Stadium. It won't be completely new to him, but with this set of teammates, it's going to be a different construct for them going to Spartan Stadium on Saturday.
How about this? Even in the sense that their home stadium's a lot smaller.
Yes. And they've had some raucous home environments. They've
even then what that seat about 55,000.
Yes.
So I mean, they haven't been at so it's a challenge for them. But here's the thing: when you start winning, you start the season 8-0, you start feeling like you can take on anything. So they're not going to come in here being intimidated by it, at least initially. Now we could do something about that with our play and our crowd, and early on. Throwing some doubt in those guys, and then it starts to snowball.
Michigan State's defense has been really good. The opening series against Iowa and Michigan the last 2 weeks needs to happen again this weekend. Ron, I'll let you go. I really appreciate you checking in. You doing all right, man?
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Had to jump in on the bat phone for you.
You on your way back home now?
Yes, sir.
Playoff game Friday against Milford?
Yes, sir.
East Lansing High School? I might be over there. Clarizio doing okay? What's the word on him?
Should be good. As far as I know.
Jace Clarizio, running back, commitment to Michigan State, East Lansing High School. MHSAA playoffs start Friday, playing at home against Milford. I might go check that out myself. Ron, you take care. Look forward to talking to you soon, all right? Thanks for calling in.
Yes, sir. Agreed.
There he goes. All right, appreciate him calling in. Let's go to the comments area really quick. Let's see if we can get through this real quick. I got 12 questions I want to get to, but we're already running late on this. Chris Rowe, been a long time since I've caught a live show. Great to have Chris Rowe here. What are the chances against Indiana? We've been talking about that for an hour and a half. Old Tuck checking in the bell cow. Old Tuck, it's always great to have Old Tuck coming in. And by the way, as I say annually, we got the old brass spittoon. The old brass spittoon on Halloween. Old brass spittoon. It's enough of that. You guys getting sick of me. Sorry about that. Had to do that. Anyway, Old Tuck said Jonathan Smith needs to wake up. The West Coast laid back stuff does not cut it in East Lansing, Old Tuck says. Old Tuck says last week's performance against Michigan was West Coast written all over it, says Old Tuck. Old Tuck, originally from, Muskegon? Ludington. Now he's down there in Texas, mixing it up down there. He says, Old Tuck, Izzo already tired of Akins. Remember when he threatened to go to the NBA 2 years ago? Old Tuck's very prolific here. Indiana does not have any backs in the mold of Alex Smith. Alex Smith was remember that 20 years ago? He was a good running back. But this guy Ellison is good. Maple Leaf 29 says, glad you're doing a daytime show again. Maple Leaf 29 says, it could be that they are so good against the run because they are blowing people out so early, and opposing teams may have to pass to keep up, maybe. True, but per carry average is very good as well. And like I said, they specialized in stopping the run at James Madison. I realize that's a different opponent, or different level, but it's still like on like in terms of Sun Belt personnel against Sun Belt personnel. They stopped the run, best in the country last year in tackles for loss. So Michigan State's got to solve that situation. Chris Rose says Michigan State should have thrown to Marsh more against Michigan. He could burn DBs all night. I don't disagree. John says Signetti is 125-35 all-time coaching record. That's outstanding for sure, and took James Madison deep in the playoffs a number of times. Prior to that, I think he coached at Elon. Did a good job there. I think Indiana, Pennsylvania as well. J.J. McKay texting in from the Keweenaw Peninsula says, I agree about Marsh, Chris. Couldn't believe they would not throw to him more with Will Johnson out. J.J. McKay says, Signetti was smart to bring his 13 JMU players with him. Chris Rose says, yes, Indiana's not lost a game. All right. J.J. McKay says, Washington had the number one pass defense in the NCAA at the time they played. That's also a good point. Indiana's a damn good team, although they've had a fairly easy schedule, says J.J. McKay from the Keweenaw. Papa Smurf says this guy compared Penix to Tommy Frazier. Can't take his football talk. I think he's talking about Nils. Might be talking about me. Fair to have those opinions. We welcome all criticisms. Maybe he's talking about J.J. McKay. A little internal squabbling going on here. Let me see what's going on. All right. Talking about antics. I think we got BW says antics. MSU has instigated it every time. They didn't instigate this thing. I think Colston Loveland with a headbutt instigated it. And then Woods, grabbed his helmet, and that started it. But he doesn't do that if he doesn't get headbutted. And you can say, well, why did Woods get into him that hard on a victory formation situation? Well, go back and look at Michigan's victory formation against Minnesota. They fumbled a snap on those. And it wasn't victory formation. They weren't really sure with the math whether they could run out the clock or not. But it's a Michigan team that had trouble with victory formation earlier in the year. So you keep playing, and they might fumble a snap. Is that what Woods was doing, or was he trying to get a couple shots in? Probably trying to get a couple shots in. Antics. It's antics, BW. What else do we have here? A lot from YT Sparty and JJ McKay. A lot of posts. Can't get to them all. Let's go here to the mailbag, and we'll run through them quickly. I've got a lot of notes here, though. I'll try to get through them quickly. We've already covered some of these things, so we can just skip past them. Mark in Chandler, Arizona says, seems like Childs was hesitant to throw the ball downfield in this game. Was that part of the plan, or do you think he was somewhat timid? I don't think he was timid. We talked about this earlier. Maybe they didn't trust the pass protection. The last drive in the red zone, we talked about that a moment ago. Michigan State had the ball basically 4 times in each half, not counting the fumble at the end of the half. And on the fumble at the end of the half, they were looking deep on that one when he was fumbled, hit from behind. So Michigan State scored on 3 of 8 drives pretty much. Make a field goal and you're 4 out of 8. So they moved the ball okay, kind of, but it was limited possession type of game. The third drive is 3rd and 7. Michigan's in press. Marsh is by himself in press. Michigan State attempted a screen pass to Lynch Adams, no gain. 3rd and 7 there. I know you don't have a lot of time to throw, but you maybe 3-step fade like they did with Montori Foster. Throw it up there to Marsh. Could have had an opportunity there. Instead, they had a screen. So that wasn't Childs' decision on that one. Although they can always check to a fade like they did in the Florida Atlanta game, but they've gone away from that. That could come later in his career, but they scaled back on that later. 10:30 left in the game, fourth quarter. This is a long touchdown drive. Michigan State ends up scoring a touchdown anyway. 1st and 10 between the 40s. Like I said earlier, that's a time when a lot of times traditionally teams like to go for a deep shot. 1st and 10 between the 40s. Paterno always did it. Saban always did it. 1st and 10. They pumped to the flat, and they looked deep to Marsh on that one. But Michigan was in bailing off coverage, and they went back to the flat to Alante Brown, gained 5 and made 1 miss. But on that one, they were looking to go deep between the 40s, and Michigan happened to be bailing in a deep zone. So did not end up hurting them because Michigan State scored on that drive anyway. But they were looking deep. So anytime, although they didn't throw deep a lot, there were times when they were looking deep. In the last drive, remember when Michigan State had the intentional grounding on Childs? That was Max Pro, 2 receivers. One, I think, was a deep in, and one was a deep. I can't remember if that was a dagger concept or what it was, but there was someone deep. Wanted to go deep, but it was cover 3. So I think one of them ends up being a dig. If it had been pressed, they might have been both verticals. He's looking to go deep, getting pressure, intentional grounding. He's got tight ends around him. He throws it into the ground. It's not intentional grounding. So, but the reason he when he throws it out of bounds and nobody's there, it's because there's only 2 receivers out and they're deep. So it's max protection. One, I think, was like 20-yard in and one was deep. So they didn't throw it deep a lot in this game, but there were times, like I just mentioned, when there were deep choices. But Michigan happened to be in deep zone in those particular plays. But to your point, in my opinion, when they looked back at the film, they probably wish they would have at least done it a couple times more. But pass protection was a problem, and the run game was going well. But usually the run game sets up those opportunities, and it just seemed like Michigan State got out of character a little bit in that respect. Pass rush had something to do with it. Question 3, Thermopylae says, a couple weeks late, but any fishing stories from Oregon? Yeah, we went fly fishing with Kid Sensation out there and the Fall River. And we had some choices. We could go to some places and have a better chance to catch. He gave me a few choices, and I said, hey, let's. And one of the ones that caught my ears when he said there's a place that's very picturesque, very beautiful, and there's big trout in there, but they can see you, and it's really hard to catch them. So it might not be doing a lot of catching, more fishing than catching. And we went there, and there were some big trout in there holding up, and trying different things to get them to go. Couldn't quite do it, but did catch a rainbow, and not really with casting, but just kind of like drifting them. And excited to get the rainbow, got it out, and it flipped out of my hands, and it was on the ground. It's flipping around in the dirt, and it's got dirt all over it. Now I'm worried about the fish, right? It's like, dang. Now, you spend all this time trying to catch a fish. Now you're worried about the fish dying, which is one of the conflicts in all this. So I want to get him rinsed off and get him back in the river, and I rinse him off, and he's okay. Seems okay. And he just sits right there. I want to get a picture, so I reached back in and grabbed him with my hands like a bear. Never done that before. He was a little bit tired, of course, so I probably should have left him alone. My hands were wet, but I didn't have the protective glove on. There's probably people that be mad at me about that. Got the picture, put him back in, and seemed to be okay. He looked okay for sure, but you never know long term. But I think he was all right. So happy to get that one. Kid Sensation got a brookie, and it was good. It was nice. It was a challenge, and it was good. Fall River in Oregon. Question 4, Ernie in Colorado. What have you seen from? And that was on Sunday. Michigan State played Friday night, drove to Bend, Oregon on Saturday, went fishing on Sunday, came back Monday. Ernie in Colorado, what have you seen from the offensive line that has led to an improvement in the run game? Better technique across the board, he asks, or have things been changed and modified? First of all, like Mooby said, Luke Newman's done a really good job at left tackle, physicality, getting out on people. Miller was really good against Oregon. Asking Brian Lindgren about it 2 weeks ago, and they made some adjustments during the bye week. but also just recommitment to physicality and getting after people rather than catching and trying to catch people on the move, just doing what you do. So I think there's a little change in mindset, a little change in getting familiar with one another. You know, the first 4 or 5 games, they were changing offensive lines every week because of injuries. Also, you know, the wide zone, which is a staple for Oregon State and it's going to be a staple for Michigan State at some point, sounded like I couldn't really detect it looking at it, but they're more vertical with that rather than it's not stretching it as wide, a little more vertical with that. So I think that's one of the things they changed it. So that combination with more physicality, you're always trying to be physical, but apparently a little adjustment to the mentality there has helped. The wide zone is not as wide, I don't think. And also, I've said this the last couple of weeks, Iowa and Michigan have been 2-gapping teams. Now they're playing an Indiana team that's more of a 1-gapping team, so it's going to, styles make fight. It's a different situation. So now can Michigan State run wide zone against these guys? There's going to be some tackles for loss by Indiana in this game, I would think. But can Michigan State get the other components going? Maybe the wide zone will be good against this team, and if so, that'll be another feather in their cap. Great matchup, run game versus run defense on that one. Question number 5, Bill from Byron Center. What are you hearing about Cole Dellinger? If he's hurt, isn't this the 3rd year now that he's been out? Yes, he got dinged up again during camp, and yes, continues to be injuries, and he was a 4-star recruit coming in from Clarkston. And yes, it's I've not heard anything about it being a concern, but you can read between the lines that's got to be getting concerning. That being said, I remember a guy named Sean Poole out of Flint back in the early 2000s who was a 4-star coming in, and he had an injury early in his career. 5th year, started and was outstanding. I think he might have been 2nd team All Big Ten. Got injured like the last game of the season. I think he could have been an NFL guy. Maybe not with all those injuries because I think he would have gotten a shot. But he eventually got his chance and did well. So Dellinger, you got to hope for the best on that one. He says Dallas Fincher seems to have hit a ceiling and the staff is prioritizing other players, or is he hurt too? No, I think Fincher's healthy, but I think you're right. I think they're going with that set 5 right now. They'd like to play 6 or 7. I'm not sure they have total confidence in that right now. Question 6, Chris from South Lyon says, how can the defense be opportunistic against Indiana, an Indiana team that scores in bunches? How can they be opportunistic? Opportunism in football, it's turnovers and pass rush, right? Michigan State's not great at either. Pass rush sacks were good earlier in the year. They haven't had sacks in the last 3 or 4 games. They feel like they've had a decent number of quarterback pressures, but opportunistic in defense. First things first, opportunism would be great if they can get takeaways. They're trying to emphasize takeaways this weekend against a team that does not turn it over. First things first, stop the run, stay on the same page and pass defense. Don't have the coverage busts, communication-wise. Don't have tackling angle problems like they've had a couple that have gotten out against Iowa and the quarterback keeper. Those things, first things first, opportunism can come later. So first things first, be solvent with run defense, communication, tackling angles, and they're still working on that. And Rossi's a good coach. I think they'll get there. Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina says, hey, Jim, it finally came out what Michigan did in the locker room after the Devon Bush game. How do we allow Michigan time after time to control the narrative and keep putting up with their BS? In the latest episode, I keep thinking if any Michigan State player did exactly what Mullings did, he would have been immediately suspended. Am I wrong? That's Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina. I don't think you're wrong. I got to believe that if a Michigan player had come off had done that, I think Michigan State gets a suspension there. I could be wrong. Just my thought. I understand your anger. The episode in the locker room, Graham Couch was mentioning this, that there was, after the Devin Bush incident when Michigan came out with the choreographed, trying to get in the way of Michigan State's field walk, which was all choreographed. They had photographers out there and everything. And that's what it looked like to me. And Greg Ianni, the former athletic director for facilities, that's his word as well. That thing was all a setup. He said that they came out and told the Michigan players, hey, we're going to be doing a walkthrough. You guys got to get off the field. And he says they were very defiant about not wanting to get off the field. So they were trying to create an incident. And there was an incident. And Michigan State was fined $10,000 for it. Devin Bush was angry, went out there and was kicking up the field. Everybody remembers that. So yeah, Michigan wins that game, and I had heard that they had trashed the locker room. I didn't know exactly what they meant. I'd heard some things about turds in the shower or something like that. I never confirmed it, so I never really reported it or brought it up with some of the pregame stuff through the years. There are some people I could have asked and should have asked, because I did ask about the Devin Bush temper tantrum out there when he was being restrained and he was like going crazy, like trying to get at somebody. He was going after Foudy. What was her name? Was it Amy Foudy? She did a great job as the turf management person. That's her field. And like there are times when we would go out there and do the VCast on the field and she would like get off the field. I mean, that grass is her grass. After the game, it's in, every second of recovery is important to her. When we've done VCasts afterward, we were always like on the pavement part on the side, not wanting to get on the grass. And when he was out there kicking it around, I remember seeing it on the television because I was not there when it happened. And I was wondering, where's Foudy on this? What is she doing? And the camera shows Bush going crazy. And we found out later the guy he was being restrained, the person he was going after was Foudy. And she was there because that's her grass. And I know how she is. Someone comes out there, does some of her grass. She's not going to back down from anyone. She was probably out there, telling him, what are you doing, idiot? And so he had to be restrained. If they had let him go, what's he going to do? Go over there and body slam her? I'm not sure. The guy was crazy at the time. And I reported that and took a lot of heat from Michigan fans about that. And then Foudy came out with something that confirmed it. And it wasn't like a press release. She was doing something about a turf management, like a video, and that kind of came up and vindicated what I said, that he was going after her. But again, that narrative didn't come out either, and the camera was panned in tightly. If it had been out further, that would have looked a lot worse for him and Michigan. And I did get that from somebody on the inside, that he was going after her, and then she, with something else, verified it. So I got that information from the inside. I could have gotten more from the inside about feces and turds in the locker room. Never got it confirmed, and I regret that because it's important to a lot of people. But Graham Couch has heard the same things, and he let it drop, no pun intended, on his podcast this week. He was talking about feces on the wall, which I didn't hear that. I don't doubt it, but it just seems to me, would somebody go through the trouble of actually putting, reaching and, if you do it in the shower, you don't have to reach anything. So I'm not sure what it was, but it was Michigan. After that game, the celebration they did, and I think the quarterback then, was it Shea, what's his name, the transfer from Mississippi? He was on the Mitch Albom radio show, I think, every week. And after that, he said, yeah, we wanted to make that sting. So that comes from the top. Harbaugh and the coaches, they wanted to make that loss sting. That's what they were about with the Michigan State rivalry. So not only did they go overboard with the celebration, okay, that's fine. They choreographed what Harbaugh said was a stormtrooper thing. I like to call the Red Rover incident. Okay, that's fine. Feces in the locker room, wanting to make it sting. Now it's just disgusting, childish behavior. And that's what Harbaugh was. He was childish. Good football coach, but he's childish. He just was. Juvenile. So that's what that was. But your question is, why does, time after time Michigan controls the narrative? Something like that, if you're Michigan State, maybe they should leak that out a little bit, right? Because there were talk about it, but nobody's really come out and said what it was. And I agree with you that they probably could be a little more forthcoming with that, because it is a smear campaign. Every time Michigan State does something, the other side is really bent on smearing Michigan State, as they've tried to do for 100 years. They try to keep Michigan State out of the Big Ten, try to prevent Michigan State from becoming a university, all those things. They've got a complex about Michigan State. They know what a beautiful campus it is and what the potential was in the 1940s and 50s when the Midwest was the industrial giant that it was, and Michigan State was getting stronger and was a college football powerhouse in the early 50s. They didn't want Michigan State in the Big Ten. I don't know what the problem is, but it's always been like that. I don't think Sharon Moore is like that. Dusty May is new to it. So there might be a little bit of a thaw in that. But in terms of feces in the locker room, I suspect that's a one-time thing. I don't think Sharon Moore is going to go for that. I think Harbaugh is very special in his juvenile approach on some of these things. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. Question 8, Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights says, do you believe the bigs for Michigan State basketball will stand up to the top teams when it comes to rebounding? Will they also be able to score enough to keep some pressure off the perimeter shooters? Kohler and Zapala, Jackson Kohler and Simone Zapala, I think they're going to be decent rebounders. Against the top teams, as you said, are they going to out-rebound the top teams? I doubt it. But Kohler, he's got a little more lift to his jump now. He's eager to be a rebounder. He's excited about being more than a 12-minute-a-game player, and he's got the skill to do that. Can they score enough to keep some pressure off the perimeter shooters? Yes, I think Michigan State's going to get it down low to Kohler. They'll be, against size, he's got excellent moves. Everybody knows that. Against size, sometimes the field goal percentage for him is not great, but he's still developing as a player. That could come in time, shortly. That's what we'll be watching as the season develops soon. He's got some face-up shooting ability. That helps as well. But you're right. If they can score inside, that provides more openings for the outside. Fiddler, pretty good shooter. Akins has been a good shooter in the past. Has not shot well yet this year. Is that a concern? Not yet. Rebounding, I would not expect Booker to do much rebounding. Cooper, functional rebounding on a per-minute basis. He'll be a little stronger and a little better at that now just because he's a year older and a year stronger. But, I would not expect, great rebounding from Michigan State at those positions. But there's been times when Michigan State's gotten good rebounding from teams that, even though it's the Izzo program and rebounding is supposed to be what they do, there have been some teams that did not have great size necessarily, but rebounded well. I think back to the 2001 team. You had Zach Randolph coming off the bench, but you had Hudson as a 5. You had Bell and Thomas and Richardson. Can't remember who the 4 was. Was it Ballinger? Hudson was good, but you're not, it's a different era, I realize, but that was a great rebounding team. But it's not like they had a lot of skyscraper talent. And these had other teams that the 2005 Final Four team did not rebound all that well. And you had Allen Anderson at the 4 for a lot of that season. So they've done it both ways. I don't think it'll be bad, but I don't think it'll be great. And against the top teams, like you're saying, I don't necessarily expect big man rebounding to be a plus. I could be wrong, but we will continue to watch as we go. Tom from Asheville, North Carolina says, can Cohen Carr rush the passer? A little bit of a smart aleck. Question 10, Ryan from Royal Oak. Can you give us your opinion on where parts of the program currently sit and where they need to be for Michigan State to contend for the Big Ten on a regular basis? Contend for the Big Ten on a regular basis. I mean, we're in an era where it's the Big Ten and the SEC and kind of everybody else. If you contend for the Big Ten championship, you are one of the top 5 teams in the country. If you contend for the Big Ten title on a regular basis, you're one of the top 3 programs in the country. So that's a little bit high. I know that there's no reason to have a college football team unless you're trying to aim that high. But you're asking what Michigan, where Michigan State's program is to that end. No. They don't have a roster to do that. They don't have the recruiting to do that. You're asking about roster, facilities, recruiting, and NIL. Facilities, I guess, maybe in some ways. But no, you're asking if Michigan State's as good as Ohio State is basically what you're asking. And the answer is no. As good as Oregon? No. And Oregon's done a great job with NIL and facilities that they've really elevated that program, and they're a juggernaut right now. Is Michigan State at that level? No. Penn State's been trying to get there. Michigan was there. Now Michigan's going to have a little trouble staying there. That's it out of 18 teams. USC's fallen way off. Everybody knows that. So, you're talking with a mindset of 1998 when it was all about winning the Big Ten, getting to the Rose Bowl. And if you did that, George Perlis goes to the Rose Bowl in 87, very good team, and that team was number 10 in the country. You could win the Big Ten, go to the Rose Bowl, and you're not sniffing the top 5. This era where there's two major conferences, Big Ten, SEC, it's a lot harder to win the Big Ten now than it was in 1987. Way harder. So you're thinking, to contend for the Big Ten every year. I suspect you're talking like a 1990s mentality. That mentality is different now. Getting into the playoff is another thing. If you get into the top 12, that's achievable. That's difficult. And that is kind of the new, in my opinion, for Michigan State, that's the new, main goal. If you get in there, you make some noise, maybe get a home game, I don't know. That being said, 2013, Michigan State might have been the best team in the country. Top 3, won the Rose Bowl. Didn't really see that coming the year before. They were a 500 team the year before. So sometimes it can happen quickly. And so you just want to be good. Obviously, every year set up a base camp at 8-4, which is hard to do. And then things might come together and you can make a run at something. Anyway, you're asking where is Michigan State where does the program sit currently to be able to contend for the Big Ten on a regular basis in terms of roster, recruiting, NIL, and facilities? Roster. I think Michigan State's roster is probably in the lower third of the Big Ten and maybe middle third. It was looking like lower third in the winter, but Michigan State did a really good job with a lot of like 3-star transfer portals that have all been nice contributors, which has ended up being maybe like a middle third in the Big Ten in terms of the roster. And they've done a very good job to accumulate talent to get to that point. Overall, they need help. Offensive tackle, pass protection, defensive end, pass rush. Everything else is pretty competitive, pretty respectable. I think Michigan State's played respectable football this year. Got to get the red zone to work. Got to get the quarterback a little bit more experienced and hope that he doesn't hit a ceiling soon. I don't think he will. Recruiting, currently, rankings-wise, Michigan State's like lower third of the Big Ten. But if the evaluation in recruiting is as good as it's been in the portal and as good as it was at Oregon State, you can rank in the lower third and have a middle third roster. They want to be better than that at some point, but that's kind of where I think recruiting is right now. Is it where Ohio State and Oregon are? No. Where Penn State are? No. Can they get there some point? Maybe. Do they think if they win they can make a run at something like that? I've not really talked to them about, if they expect to be able to defeat Ole Miss for recruits in Florida. That's kind of what it takes to have like a top 20 recruiting class. Or you can have a class ranked number 30 and you've done a great job with evaluation, player development, chemistry, and those things to end up with a top 12 class, a top 12 team in the playoff. Different ways to do it. Maybe. NIL, Michigan State is potentially pretty good at NIL, but still not fully organized or fully structured. There's a difference of opinion at Michigan State. Some want to keep everything in-house. Some want to venture out and get creative with some outsourcing, and it's at a standstill right now. But there's potential there, but sometimes if you don't make a decision, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Is that what Neil Peart wrote for Rush once upon a time? Michigan State's kind of right there, kind of waiting. And I'll let you know if something changes there. Facilities are good. I think they just poured all that money into facilities. They look pretty good to me. I don't know what they'd be lacking there. I don't know. Question 11, on the banks from Grand Rapids says, being 8 games into the season, what holes in the roster do you believe Smith and the staff will look to patch up via the transfer portal this offseason? Great question. Off the top of my head, wide receiver Montori Foster is going to be gone. They might need one more wide receiver. Running back Nate Carter is going to be gone. I realize they've got K'Ron Lynch-Adams coming back, and the 2 freshmen are getting some work, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went after a running back. Offensive line, Luke Newman's going to be gone at left guard. Tanner Miller's gone at center. Brandon Miller's gone at right guard. You got Big Dooley coming back from injury. Brocious coming back from injury. Rakeem Johnson's going to be in there somewhere, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go after 1 or 2 offensive linemen that are game ready. It's hard to find people at that position. Michigan had a transfer from Northwestern. Michigan's had some plug-and-play offensive linemen the last couple of years. Guys that want to be part of something that's a championship program right now could be faltering. Indiana's right tackle's a transfer from Wisconsin who had been a starter but then didn't start last year. That's the type of guy you're going to get probably if you're looking for an FCS-level offensive lineman. Can you go to the MAC or smaller levels and find a Luke Newman, something like that? Yeah, I think 1 or 2 would not surprise me. I've not heard that officially, but it would not surprise me. Defensive tackle, always need those guys, right? Satchel has another year. Van Sumeren has another year. Dowse. Is Dowse going to be gone? I think Dowse is gone, right? He's been a really good player. That was a nice find in the pool. Transfer portal, what I call the pool. So I think Ben Roberts, Daquan Dowse is a 6th-year player, so he's going to be gone. That's been a good player for them. You need another Daquan Dowse is what you need. Ben Roberts, I think, has got a pretty good future. So I think another defensive tackle. And if they have as much success in the portal with some of those portal guys as they did this past year, that would help a lot. Pass rusher, everybody wants one. Good luck with that. That being said, this guy, number 6, Kamara for Indiana, was at James Madison, and he can pass rush in any league. So those are some of the positions. Nick in Grand Rapids says, are you concerned about the 2025 recruiting class size? He says, I think we've had some good players committed, but 15 commitments seems low. With Bork, the tight end, flipping to Wisconsin, and now Aiden West tweeting out about his North Carolina offer today, has me beginning to question the class. Good question. I think Aiden West, I said when I looked at his film, I'm like, that guy looks like a 4-star to me. He was a 2-star. I'm like, that guy looks like a 4-star. He's been having a great senior season, playing like a 4-star. More people are coming after him now. Got to hold on to him. I think he's an important one. The rankings are like number 49 in the country right now. I've always said anything between 26 and 45, those classes are all the same. That just depends on how you did for your needs and how your evaluation is. And then later on, your player development. You can have a good team with classes ranked in the top 45. You get outside of the top 45 into the 50s on a regular basis. At Michigan State, that's not been a good mix. That's not been a good mix for a lot of teams, Big Ten teams over the years. So they're kind of on that border. I could say some other things about the rankings and things that they could have done, but they're not into recruiting to win a press conference or to rise in the rankings. They're looking at Elijah Dotson, looking to flip him from Pittsburgh. If Michigan State goes full blast and throws in a lot of NIL, they could probably get him. He's a 4-star from Belleville, number 2 player in Michigan, 6'1", 170. Does Michigan State deem him as somebody that, frankly, is going to be worth the money? If they were worried about headlines and rankings, they would get the money and do it. The previous staff was a little bit more like that. If you add him and a couple other guys, the ranking could look a lot better, but is the class actually better? I'll talk more about that as we get toward signing day. Junior college defensive back Deshaun Davila, 6'1" guy from Northwest Mississippi Community College. He visited Michigan State a couple weeks ago. He's visiting a lot of schools. So he's probably, whenever someone's visiting a lot of schools, I wonder about, if they're just trying to get some, everybody's trying to get money, right? But does that become purely a money situation? I don't know. He's a 4-star recruit, number 1 junior college corner in the country, number 6 in the country. So he could probably command a lot of money. He's originally from, I think, northern Florida. So the Florida Gators are coming after him. So they're going to be a factor. However, Florida, you don't know who the coach is going to be. There's a hot seat situation there, but there could be a coaching change there, which could all of a sudden make them even more, make them attractive anew with him. He's visited Michigan State, visited Arkansas, Utah, Arizona State, Virginia Tech. I'm sorry, those are visits he has scheduled. I think he has only visited Michigan State and Iowa. That's Deshaun Davila. Talked to Jason Kelp about him a little bit, and he says Florida might end up being the team to beat. Keep an eye on defensive end Chaz Coleman, defensive end from Warren Harding, Warren, Ohio, 6'5", 205. Thinnish type of guy, thin at 205. 3-star, number 23 in Ohio, maybe a late bloomer type of guy. Michigan State, Kentucky, Penn State offers, Ole Miss offer. That one could be competitive. Does Michigan State? You go get a guy like that. It's a developmental guy. It might take a while. There's a Canadian by the name of Emmanuel Nuwawu from Montreal. Saw him at the Sound Mind Sound Body Camp at Wayne State this year. Really put together, 6'4", 240. Straight out of Central Casting. Moves well also. He's a no-star guy. Boston College offered. Michigan State offered at the end of the summer. Michigan State's going to be in there a little bit. He's a below-the-radar guy. Michigan State was fortunate to see him. They feel fortunate to have seen him at that camp, I suspect. If Michigan State goes full blast for him, I think he's an interesting one to throw in the talent pool, see if he develops, see what he becomes. But probably low-hanging fruit right there could probably get him. Keep an eye on offensive lineman from Coopersville, Michigan, J.J. Hurtis. He's committed to Western Michigan, number 39 player in Michigan. Michigan State, no offer yet, but he's visiting Illinois this weekend. So those are some of the guys. In terms of your curiosity about the recruiting class, if Michigan State gets Dotson, maybe they could get a top 45 class. Then it just comes down to how good is the evaluation long term. They still want to add 6 or 7. It's my understanding. I've said it, and I'll stick with it. You don't want to be outside the top 50 on a regular basis. The coaches seem pretty excited about the level of talent that's within drivable distance in the Midwest, and they've been excited about the number of Detroiters that are in the NFL. There's more Detroiters, players from the city of Detroit, in the NFL than any other city. Yes, more than Atlanta, more than Los Angeles, more than Miami, more than Houston. There's more players from Detroit than any city in the opening day rosters in the NFL. I don't know if that was the case this year, but that was the case last year. A lot of those players were not recruited by Michigan or Michigan State. A lot of those guys were not, they're 3-star recruits that are not going to help your recruiting class rankings a whole lot. So evaluation, player development comes into that quite a bit. Someone like Sauce Gardner, one of the best corners in the National Football League, was a 3-star guy from Detroit who signed with Cincinnati. You go back and look at his high school film, it's not spectacular. So What I'm saying is sometimes the players that end up being really talented, like all those Detroiters in the NFL, some of them were not 4-stars. Some of them were. So they're excited about the talent pool and what they can do in Ohio and sprinkling out into California, Texas, some other places. They've not been as busy in Georgia yet. So I don't know. Still keeping an eye on it. They've got a good track record for evaluation, so we'll keep an eye on that as we go along. Appreciate everybody checking in and being a part of Spartan Mag Live today. Pretty good smattering of pretty good crowd of people here on a Thursday afternoon on short notice. We'd like to get these off earlier in the week because that kind of just gets more gives people more of a chance to watch this before the game is upon us. Looks like I left Big Movie's name up there too long. Anyway, appreciate everybody checking us out. Go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. Half off right now, SpartanMag.com. Love to have you a subscriber over there. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Everybody be good to one another. Have a good Tuesday next week. We're all good. We're all good. Stay good. Take care.